just kind of like chiming into everything. Basically, I believe in the academic quarters, so we're gonna take like a 15-minute pause until everyone can attend and they have the shit set up, right? If you guys, yeah.
Oh my
So
god.
No more cucumber attack.
So,
no more
heads up,
cucumber attack.
I have just installed Visual Studio. I have never used it before. I don't know how to code. Is this a problem? Should I, as I say, bury myself in the sand and as God
I
intended?
hope you didn't install Visual
So
Studio because that would be wrong.
No, he installed code for sure.
Yeah, I Visual
okay.
Studio code because that was the thing that was linked.
All right, well,
that's the thing.
the good news is that I'm going to be streaming my screen, and you're going to be seeing all the porn on my desktop.
God
Nice.
bless.
fuck
Lovely.
And
Yeah.
and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna teach you guys, because this thing is not just for oh hey, do you guys want to know how to make Dick Suck 69 in armor?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
okay, look, you can make
My
Dick
ears
Suck.
are ringing.
Dick
Listen,
Suck 2077. Let's go.
you can make Dick Suck 69. However, we're not gonna be doing Dick Suck 69.
Oh.
Show's over, guys. Go home.
We will, however, be teaching you the magics of SQF today.
Lovely.
So yeah, during the presentation, you may want to mute yourself or gonna server mute you.
Camo, why is that such a good meme?
Pretty good.
I shouldn't be watching this. I'm gonna get stopped at the border, but god damn it.
Yeah, so this really reminds me of my college days, because like our assistant would usually like spend like 20 minutes setting up the fucking laptop.
Oh man.
Well,
It's like
didn't you
people-
go for, like, didn't you like study computer sciences?
Well, yes.
Does it make it better or worse? I'm not too sure.
Hey,
Yes.
Croguy, can you set your Visual Studio to like the ugliest theme just to piss everyone off?
Oh, you mean white mode? Yeah.
Yeah, or red.
Hey, base.
Well, okay. Here's the thing.
I can
So-
recommend this theme. Look at this. Green.
Do you have?
Military green theme that I found.
It's
Look at
John
this shit.
117. It's fucking Master Chief Visual Studio.
Like this. This is.
I'm trying to figure out if you can fucking crop windows in OBS.
This is the worst theme ever.
The stream has ended. The stream
Sorry,
sucks.
so Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ.
Oh, this is gonna be like my YouTube video of this is gonna be a complete mess. So I hope everyone's cool with that. Because I have
That's
no
fine.
idea. I've never set up fucking multi-window shit before.
It's like online lessons. Someone has to record it because the teacher.
At least we're not using themes.
I wish we were on Zoom.
Alright, so
Oh,
I'm gonna be honest
God.
with you guys. I would have recorded this if I had like two conditions. So number one, if I had hard drive capacity, because this is gonna be pretty fucking long, and second of all, the other problem that I have is that my graphics card is fucking cooking. It's fucking full
I think
blast.
we can hear your fan in the background.
Yeah, okay. The other reason why is because I'm sitting naked in my room.
See,
What?
Because it's so hot in here that I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
So
Yeah, Croguy, get fucked. It just rained. It just fucking rained.
Like 10 years ago, I was like up to my neck in the
That's
bathtub
crazy.
in like ice cold water because
I
it
thought you
was
said cola there. That would have been strange.
Oh, but it would have been
Show me your
fucking
webcam,
cool.
dude.
Coca-Cola bath
I
water.
thought turning
Ah.
No, he
Imagine
was just
putting-
lying in the bath.
Imagine how
That's
sticky
interesting.
your skin would get.
No.
Oh, will
I don't think I will.
Professor Croguy not ask us to turn on our cameras? Oh, this is so sad.
I mean, if you actually have your camera on your computer, that's very not bog.
Mr.
No,
Croguy.
it's in a drawer. I can just pull it out.
Mr. Croguy, can I go to the toilet?
No, I was at the toilet like 5 minutes ago.
Pissing and shitting is forbidden.
Okay.
What about coming?
I will allow that.
Coming permitted. Pissing and shitting banned.
So yeah, guys, let's.
I'm
I'll just-
installing the 20th fucking
I'll
extension
just.
that I found.
I will just restart Discord very quickly. And when I restart Discord, we're going to check how my live stream works. Okay?
I thought you're live. How you
I
live?
really feel like we need to make a broadcast channel because you people can't shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
So true,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, so true.
Or just mute Valiant and Perundus.
Damn, kinda cringe.
I mean, Perundus, you keep talking over people, so. I don't know.
Also,
Alright, we're back.
another kind of thing that you might want to consider is that people are just going to join who aren't actually a part of the thing.
Well, that's okay because I can just lock the channel.
Right, fair.
And what if someone leaves and wants to come back?
They're
Oh,
doomed.
well, they can just ask. The funny thing is, right? Okay, I'm just gonna ask that question. Actually, hang on. Well, we have the mission seminar thing, so we can also switch that channel.
Yeah, I just set it up. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how it works exactly right now.
Oh. Oh shit.
Hey, very good. We have the subject here, and can you guys make a request, and then I'll try to answer them. How does this work? Hi. Okay, we have Walrus online. Hi. Can you speak? Walrus? You guys, everyone who sent invites now should be able to speak.
Hello?
And speak.
Hello?
Oh,
Alright.
apparently you need to
Testing.
fucking push a button that pops up on Discord that...
Oh, it's like a little request.
How... It's fucking busted.
So guys, it's my mission making seminar.
Oh my god, I have to click the button up there? Who the fuck made this?
I am.
Well, this was like a very quick answer to Zoom, evidently. So,
I'm going back to the stance.
yes. By the way, you guys can hear me now, right?
Oh,
Yep.
Yes.
I
Okay,
guess I
great.
don't get to speak.
New.
Now we need to wait for the video and to actually lessons begin, I guess.
Okay.
Okay, let's see here. Wait a minute.
It actually looks like you can't even do a live stream here.
You can't be fucking serious. Like, is it seriously just a speaking booth?
It is serious, it's just a speaking booth.
Oh my god, this is so fucking bad. Alright, you know what, guys. I don't think we can actually fucking do this if like we're just doing this shit. So, alright, can we all go back to Admiral and I'll just explain the situation?
This is Dan, we all know it.
Oh, Discord fucking sucks.
Yep.
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 We still need the screen share, so just share the screen here.
Yeah, we could just fucking mute everybody here, and then just share the screen here. That'll be fine.
Okay, you guys see the screen, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, and you see the infinite shit. And now I'm in armor.
Should
Yes.
we up Arma ourselves or not yet?
Well, yeah, because you see me in the editor and I'm like flying around Krasnodar and shit, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You
Do you
have
have the
just
mods
nope.
enabled or
You've turned
no?
away from Konkovo. We have Saint Mark's.
Krasnorus.
Let's find Marks. There's no Marks, but Marks does have a cool chair.
Susnorus.
Is
Fancy.
this where communism is made?
Yes, let's
This
let's
is where
find.
communism lived.
Alright, here's my main man, Brutus.
John Communism.
No, this is John Communism.
John communism.
Can't
And
wait
here
for
are
the mission.
here are the guns of communism.
Can't wait for the mission
First
hunt
name
for John
commune, last
Communism.
name
No, no, that is my fucking idea.
Communism.
No, John, you are the communist.
Hunt down
fine.
John
First
Communist
we'll
is my
chaos.
mission idea.
Defensive
Alright,
John
alright,
Communism.
guys. Here's Castle Communism.
But that's nobility.
No, castle. It's like a military
No,
fort.
you
It's not
fucking
a.
moron.
It's
We
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to end the communism.
And
somehow.
and here's the
The
Ah,
communism.
That's where they execute
It's
the
our
capitalist.
view, comrades.
This is
You
Mount
know-
Communism.
yeah, this is not
Oh
communism.
my god.
See, it's just like our system has nothing
here.
here.
Wow, we are getting sidetracked so fucking badly.
Alright, guys, here's the view that you get from Mount Communism. Isn't it fucking great?
Was that Communism International
Wait, how about the
Airport?
money for an
Yes.
airfield?
It is.
wow.
Communism International
Anyways, yeah,
Airport.
we're a couple of minutes into starting, so let's just.
Wait,
5 more minutes.
Oh, now I'm
Start
really.
up Arma.
I'm gonna finish eating my ice cream in the meantime.
Sanderson!
I'm like.
Are
I'm
you
like,
gonna share with the class?
Oh, quick question: are we on main or blended? Because I mean,
Whatever you want, but
You
I'll
know,
be
Guys, I'm blended.
I'll be
it's
doing
just-
this. I'll be doing this in blended because it's. I'm just gonna. It just do be like that.
I'm activating my machine.
activating your elements.
However, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to teach you guys how to make missions by Sunday standards. So, even if I'll be doing it on Krasnorus with like blended assets, you guys are going to learn like the one requirement we have for Sunday, and that's it.
Is it that the op has to be good?
No.
Okay.
Not even that.
Tested.
Have you played a Sunday on?
Hi, sorry I ran late. I overslept.
You are not late. Don't worry.
You don't miss anything.
You're
You
4
know, we
minutes
just
early.
missed a bit of communism. That's wrong about
Yeah,
it.
you missed,
Yeah.
you missed Mount Communism.
You know what's the best shit?
Uh,
Fucking the Strox is in his bed right now, wondering like how he's gonna be late to this, and he's like hugging his fanged body pillow.
Croguy, why are you saying that in singular? He most definitely has multiple.
Yeah, so ho haram off.
He's got the do it for her fucking poster put up on his wall.
No, it's not on his wall. It's
7.
ceiling above his bed, so when he looks up, he sees it.
Fucking John Communist.
Right next to the mirror.
Alright, now we have some headcanon. Has John Mongler caused the fall of the Berlin Wall? No.
John Mongler?
John, his evil twin, John Capitalism.
Yeah.
They fought
John
constantly.
We've got an off for and a blue for now.
I've been expecting you, Mr. Mongler.
If John Communism made communism, did John Mongler make Monglerism?
That's capitalism.
Maoism.
Mao.
Mao.
Who was just like loudly
Doodle. It's
slapping
fucking
their
doodling.
lips?
Surely if John Communism.
Yeah.
Mute yourself. Holy
So
shit.
before we go in, I will recommend that we have Oh, hang on a minute.
Wonderful.
I need to hang on.
Oh.
There goes.
You're off his sport. Don't worry.
And we never heard from him again.
There goes John
Okay.
Communism.
By John Con.
Messy communisms.
So we have John Communist. Do we have a John Croguy? Or is that?
That's John
Mm.
Capitalism.
That's how I was born. But anyways, guys, welcome back to the workshop, or rather, welcome to the workshop for your first time.
Wow!
already over.
Well, thanks for coming along, everyone.
No, you didn't see anything. You did not see anything. All right, welcome
Come on,
to the
Croguy.
mission making workshop
Jesus
seminar
Christ.
thing.
Comic
The class will be handled by me, and we're going to learn about how to make missions, and not just make missions, but also make good missions, at least to a degree. The thing is, when we're talking about mission making, we need to talk about mission making in the greater context of the community. So we've been having a lot of missions in 2021 and 2020, but very few mission makers. And a big problem with this is that a very large number of mission makers has been relying further and further on the existing frameworks and the code that they use within these frameworks, or from other people that they borrow or ask for advice. And as a result, what happened was, with this reduction of mission makers and the bigger reliance on frameworks, a lot of people kind of started having mission maker burnout because, because you're just making the same thing over and over again. And you're not really understanding the in-depth behavior. You're running in like a single issue happens. You try to make something, and it just doesn't work. Now, I have used my big analytical brain to come up with a couple of solutions. So first, we pay mission makers money. That's not happening. The second is to extort you guys. That's only I can only do that if you come to my humble shack. But nobody answered me yet. Enslaving mission makers is basically the same thing.
We already have Neo.
Yeah, or we can just ask Second 47 to come back and kill FPARMA like he did in 2013. Now, alternative to that is that we can actually kind of work out the problems that we have with mission making, figure out in depth some of the issues that mission making contains, demystify the fucking SQF bullshit, and finally run a mission making seminar, which is what we're doing right now.
Oh shit!
So but before we actually begin with this seminar, let's look back to the old seminar. Now, way back in the day, in 2019, we have made a China-themed mission using our seminar
Operation
cells.
Red Panda.
Operation Red Panda, that is correct. Now, while people said that mission was okay, I think it completely failed in actually teaching people how to make good missions. Because at the end of the day, it used the archaic FP framework and at the time kind of bad practices that I was encouraging. The mission ended up being ridiculously bloated because everyone contributed to the same mission. The workflow was very difficult because we had to bash missions together at the same time. And everyone was kind of making their own thing. It was like a Frankenstein of a mission. And as a result, the mission was very bloated. The server nearly crashed twice. The performance was terrible. And
Mission tech demo.
yeah, sort of a mission tech demo. And basically, we had a problem where the mission just wasn't representative of what a good mission is. So how do we fix this? Well, I've set out a couple of goals that should be able to fix this. The first thing is that we need to have a tutorial for mission making that people can understand. So it needs to be straightforward, it needs to be simple, it needs to explain how to get all the beats right, and more importantly, how to handle all the coding and the actual kind of background aspects that you're not going to do when you're relying on a framework. Because here's the thing: when people are programming something, they open up the various code fields that ARMA has, and they immediately hit the wall because ARMA is just very like the actual coding interface in ARMA itself is very unfriendly. And as a result, what we actually need to do is we need to kind of take a step back, make a mission from scratch without the framework, and figure out how certain coding aspects work. Along with that, we also need to figure out how mission scope and duration works. Because in general, one thing is actually making a technically competent mission, and another thing is making a mission that's actually, enjoyable to play. That a lot of things play into that. Mission duration, enemy types, compositions of friendlies, compositions of hostiles, blah 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 blah. Whatever. Either way, at the end, we'll have hopefully an action-packed and optimized and replayable mission. Now, before we begin, I'm hoping that everybody installed Visual Studio Code. I hope that everybody installed SQF extensions for Visual Studio Code. That those are the two things that I posted in the announcements in the Discord. If you haven't seen that already, you can see it later.
ARM it says or whatever.
Yeah. The SQF wiki and the SQF language extension. That's very useful because you'll just be able to, see everything. Now, additionally, you can also download the ARMA free tools if you want to use TextView, but that's like, don't worry about that now. Let's actually figure out how to make missions first. And also set these launch parameters before starting the game. Now, the second thing is the manual. Now, the manual, I'm going to be linking to you guys through a share URL. Let me just go and copy this. The manual contains the full crux of everything that we'll be talking about here. And you guys are going to be able to access it anytime during this seminar, outside the seminar, whenever the fuck you want. And I'm also going to be making a version of it for the wiki later, so it's more digestible. But basically, this guidebook contains all of the things that we'll be doing, except in more granular detail, so that you guys understand what's actually going on. Now you can check it in the modding and modding missions and scripting channel on the Discord, and you can access it there. All right, so first things first. Let's open up the Either editor and let's figure out some things out. You open it and you see a bunch of buttons and screens and things which you don't understand. Well, they are kind of simple to figure out. So we're in the editor right now, and I don't know what I'm doing. So, first things first. Pan the camera around, the right mouse button. The middle mouse button doesn't really do anything except you scroll where you're pointing, which is sort of useful, but really isn't. WSD controls your camera. Shift moves it faster. Control stops it and moves it slower. Y descends it. Q ascends it. But the M button opens up the 2D mode. The N button turns on night vision, and there's a bunch of these menus over here. So first we got the toolbar up at the very top with drop-down menus for scenario, which lets you, kind of save things, export to multiplayer, which is very important to us, as well as the stats and other things. But I mean, that's who reads statistics? Come on. Beyond that, we got the transformation tools in the edit section and the scenario button, which you're going to keep as scenario. Do not change it because you don't know what you're doing. And as well as some minor view and ability, just some general toggling buttons. Attributes gives you certain configuration parameters, but we're generally not going to use these because setting up persistence in the editor kind of sucks, and we'll get into that later. But it has some nice things like environment configuration, which, I mean, everyone's familiar with these. The multiplayer stuff is also kind of bad. It's easier to do it through text. And finally, you have these little tools, which are very important for us. In particular, we'll be looking at the config viewer a lot later. Besides that, we also have the preferences menu, which is, it's just for basic configuration. Finally, the play button, which is for play. Beyond that, you also have the scaling grids for when you need to have like patterns, like for example, if you're spawning shit on the map, you need to know how to actually make this like in a proper grid layout or something. So you need to fine tune every pixel.
Question.
Yes.
So the grid scaling thing, if you have like a full like group of men just spawning in, does the grid
Yes.
scaling essentially just completely change their formation?
Well, you can test this. So now you have this, and now you turn on the translation grid, and it doesn't. It keeps the position of whoever you're pointing at first.
Okay.
So, but however, individually, it's going to let you form nice, neat squares, which you can't do otherwise.
Cool.
All right. So, besides that, the more important thing for you is also the entities menu and the object
Spawn
menu.
menu.
Well, not a spawn menu, because it does more things than spawn, but let's explain. So the first one is like the objects. That's where all the units are. And you know that I mean, fucking, if you play Zeus, you know what this is. Compositions is the same ballpark. You spawn the same thing before, but as groups. Now the groups are a little tricky because they're defined in a little bit more of an interesting way, but we'll get to that later. You can also create triggers, waypoints, systems, and which are actually logic entities modules. We're going to need that later. And finally, markers, which are very useful. If you right click on the map, you can also do something very nice, which is place comments down on it. So if I type in my first comment, it's going to show up like this whenever you hover over it. Now, this is great for mission development because if you're coming up with ideas, you can put them down on the map, and you don't need to like worry about what the idea means. You can just write it down in the mission. All right, well, that's that. Now, let's spawn our first man. I'm going to select a range master. I'm going to put him down on the map. So, the first thing is first. When we spawn guys in the editor, we see two labels when we hover over their names. We see his name range master, and we see B_range master_F. The top is the actual visual name. The bottom is the class config name, which is used inside the editor and inside the game code as well. So when you're coding and when you're taking into consideration the range master guy, this is what you will be using whenever you're kind of handling some programming with it. And this goes for every object that you spawn. So because each one of them has its own class config name. Now, I'm assuming that everyone got that straight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Now
Yep.
keep in mind, these symbols are also case sensitive. You need to make sure that the capitalization is correct all the time. Okay?
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
All right. Besides that, we got the basics of the attribute menu. Now, if you click on the right-click button, there are some very nice things that you can use in there. Primarily the transformation and the grid option, as well as the loadout system for Ace. This is nice, but generally I recommend people to edit loadouts in game via Zeus access. And while you might be wondering, why don't we make the Zeus immediately? Well, we'll do that a bit later. I just need to explain the attribute menu first. So yeah, object type. We got a range master over here, and has everyone spawned their range master?
Yeah.
Doing it
All
now.
right. So open up its attribute menu, and in its variable name, type in game master, like I did just now. Keep all of these properties the same, and in the role description, call him a game master. And congratulations, now we have all of these properties set. They're generally not all that, all of these properties are more for like editing the abilities of NPCs. They're not all that necessary, except for the ace options over here. which denote if a character is an engineer or not. So one thing that's kind of funky about this is that you can kind of override these abilities for everyone, and keep this in account when you're using ace options. But for now, you don't need to touch anything. So now we got our game master and we can play with him, but he's not actually the Zeus game master yet. So let's go back to the presentation and let's consult the game master generation. So remember that systems tab that I talked about. What we're going to do is we're going to go back in the game. We're going to select the section and we're going to drop down a game master module. We're going to connect it to the game master. We're going to open it and we're going to assign it the role game master. Keep default add-ons all official add-ons and keep forced interface off because having it on is annoying. And congratulations, now you have your first mission. You can open it up and you can save it. I will save this one as the seminar _demo. And I'm going to save it. Now, keep in mind there are a couple of quirks you need to take into account here. Generally, when you are running a mission, you want to make sure that these binarized new scenario files options are disabled. And you also need to make sure that when you are pressing the save button, so save as rather, that the binarized scenario file is also disabled. This will make sure to help that you can actually read the SQM file, otherwise you're just going to get like a bunch of ones and zeros in the file, which is not what you want. Anyways, this is good as an initial setup, but we can also do a bit better when we're doing this. So if we make another game master module, and instead of game master in the owner field, we type in admin voted, the voted admin is also going to get Zeus privileges. And finally, you can also do the same for admin logged. And now you've fully prepared the Zeus for whoever actually comes in as an administrator and runs the mission. Generally, what we try to do is we try to make sure that the Zeus has at least some level of admin access. It's not always the case. You can ask for it. But generally, as admins, we only really need the admin privileges when we have to open up the debug menu and do some fixing. If you need to be an admin as Zeus, we can secure that for you. So don't be afraid to talk to the moderators about that. All right, so we got our Zeus man, we got our code saved for the first time in the files, but let's not get to coding yet because we need to look at the Bohemia wiki. Isn't that great?
Yay! My favorite wiki.
So, Bohemia wiki. It's a sort of community curated source for things which concern editing, for the most part. There are some other kind of side things on it, but generally, what we want is various information that is necessary for us in regards to just making stuff for Honor Free. The other things are kind of sidelined. However, what we will be using it for the most is actually looking up commands for functions and explanations of certain features. There are a couple of pages that are pretty interesting and useful though, and that's these four. So we got scripting commands per functionality, description, ext, multiplayer scripting, and event scripts. I'm going to paste these in the Discord. Zoop. And now you can access them at will. Besides that, you also have the search bar. And the search bar is very scary. Ooh, isn't the search bar scary? So what do you guys want to search for first? There's sex.
Attached to.
Sex? There is no sex.
There is no
Attached
sex.
to.
There is no sex.
It's armor.
Croguy,
Just a heads up for the search bar, it's case sensitive. It's
Yes, yeah. The search bar is also case sensitive, which means
Are you
if I
kidding?
type in create vehicle, it's gonna detect it. If I type in create vehicle, it's not gonna detect it.
Who made this?
Wow,
Why is
that's
this case
awful.
sensitive?
Just as
It's
stupid
a
as
code.
Arma itself. Jesus Christ.
Oh my god.
Yeah, there are also some minor considerations to talk about. So, when we have, let's actually look at create vehicle. Create vehicle is a very nice function. However, if you look at the extensive documentation, you'll notice that this does not necessarily.
Croguy, you cut out.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I did. I'm sorry. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
fine.
Okay. A lot of this code is community curated, not exactly accurate, and a lot of it is like made by guys which are kind of dicks sometimes.
Assholes.
But that's not to say that like all of it is bad. Like they really fucking these guys have tried their best to make sense of what Bohemia has been making, and because SQF is a very kind of contrived language, has some quirks that don't really appear in other languages. There has to be a lot of documentation. It won't always work the way it's documented, and it won't always work in multiplayer, even if the person in the comments said it will work in multiplayer. So remember, it's more important to test whatever documentation is available locally and on server, and then determine if it's okay or not. Now, with that being said, let's actually skip over to. Let me just skip over to mission configuration. All right. So first thing is first. We have saved our mission in the folder, and we're going to go and open it now. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open it through Visual Studio, and that is in.
I know there's a handy thing in the editor if you need to check which folder it's in. It's like open scenario folder. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, in my case, it is in Arma Free Other Profiles Croguy Missions, and I open up Seminar Demo Lost Island, and here it is. We have a mission folder. Now, as you can see, it's pretty empty. The only thing we have is the version data from mission SQM. And we can't really make a mission inside of mission. I mean, it's funny because we're actually, when you're in the editor, you're working with mission SQM exclusively. But you don't want to go in there in Visual Studio unless you need to fix bugs. And we're going to be fixing bugs at some point, but not now. It's not necessary. What we do need to do is we need to actually do some mission configuration. So, to do mission configuration, we will be using a file called description.ext. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up Visual Studio, and I am going to create a file called description.ext. And it's going to be adjacent to the mission file. Great. Well, so what description.ext does is it's sort of a expanded config file for accessing all of these things that are configured inside of the SQM, but a bit better because it also allows you to do certain other things like expand the config classes of Arma to a degree within the mission scope. It's useful for us because we want to add some pretty cool things inside the game later, and we can't normally do that without description.ext. So what we're going to do is we're going to populate it with this data. I'll just do a quick rundown for you guys. You can also just copy this. I believe I have it in the documentation. But generally, you want to have the class header, you want to have the title parameters, the mission settings, and the debug and cleanup options set like this. Now, I'm going to keep it for you guys like this, if I can, or I'm just gonna put it down like here, and I'm gonna write it down. So the first column defines some really basic information that you need to have for armor. The header class tells the game what information the game mode that the mission is going to be running will have, and if you don't have it, the game is going to complain. It's not mandatory, but it's really nice to have it and just generally define it on top of your description. Disabled AI equals 1 enables the AI. Don't ask me why, because that's how Czech programming works. And you also have the onload name, onload mission, briefing name, and author, which are very sensible parameters to define in description XD. The other one is this column, which is mission settings. Now, we have a couple of interesting things here. The one that you probably want to look for is respawn templates, respawn delay, respawn dialog, and respawn on start, respawn base. The way this works is that whenever you kinda die, right? If I just show you this for a second, you'll see that certain options that you can trigger inside the documentation, which kind of tells you what procedures will be used when certain respawn activity is done. So, for example, if I pick base, that will pick our side respawn marker and properly handle all the respawning logic that it's not necessary for every mission, but it's useful to have. Besides that, there is also the debug console, which you need to enable for description ext. It's not going to let you do that otherwise. Target debug, which is also necessary for debugging, and function logging, which you can set to 0. There's also the garbage cleanup, and you can just copy all these values or copy them from the documentation because it's all the same. I'm just gonna grab these and I'm gonna copy paste them.
Respawn ID 1 bird. Who are birds?
Yeah, you can. There are a lot of archaic things. You can actually make a mission where the enemy will, where all the players will respawn as birds.
I believe
Can
I
we
now
still
understand why we had the Who Are Birds incident. Like, I think it makes sense now.
Who are
yeah.
birds?
So to basically explain to you guys, like in Arma 1, when you would die, you would respawn as a bird.
Cool.
And that's
Legacy
been
code.
that's been retained in legacy code ever since. So thanks Bohemia.
I'm gonna take bets and say no if Infusion has it or not.
Yes.
Is there somewhere we can like paste this in from, or?
Yeah, you can check the link in the modding Discord, and that will the Google Docs link will have the documentation.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The chapter is
Modding
mission
is-
configuration. Yeah.
The guidebook has basically a one-to-one like copy of Croguy's slides. So just follow along the guidebook whilst
Yeah.
Croguy is talking, and
Yeah.
that'll help you out a lot.
Okay.
Keep in mind though, things will diverge a little bit later. Right now, like this is very boilerplate stuff. You don't need to do this over and over again every time you make a mission. It's just like really basic stuff that you know you can tweak inside description ext. Anyways, what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep description ext in our mind for now. Put it like in the back of the memory hole, and let's focus on the headless client.
Memory hole.
Yeah, the headless client is really cool. It so what's a headless client? A headless client is basically a guy which it's a client much like the players and the server. You put him down in a mission, and you run a headless client instance for Arma, which FPA does by default. And what happens is the headless client player enters the server, gets in the headless client slot, and all the AI processing can be offloaded from the server to the headless client, which substantially keeps the performance of the server running. because Arma is old game and it needs all the frames it can get. There are a couple of issues though. So adding AI to headless client, which has already been spawned either in Zeus or in the editor, can cause defective behavior. So, like for example, if you guys are ever looking at the map of Arma and like you're seeing AI just kind of fucking strafing into the horizon, that's because the headless client took control of an AI away from the server, and they just kind of forgot what the pathfinding is, which happens. Um, so as a result, what you need to do is you need to go in the editor and you need to blacklist units which are spawned in the editor. But that will impact server performance. So what we need to do is when we are creating units, we need to create spawners which handle unit transferring to headless client, and we'll do that in a later chapter. But for now, let's focus on just adding the headless client in. So open up the systems tab, and there should be a systems tab, logic entities, virtual entities, and we have our own little headless client code. Hi. We're going to give him the variable name HC, and we're going to make him playable. The reason why is because if you don't make the headless client playable, the headless client can't get into his slot. So yeah, remember that when you're mission making, because we had at least one case of like a headless client forgetting to get in his slot, and then the mission maker kicked him, and then we kicked the mission maker. because getting the here's the thing, client is sort of like the inverse of an FPARMA player. Getting him in the server, or like he refuses to get out of the server, but it's really difficult to get him in the server.
So he has to be playable.
The spade of missions or headless client crashed, and then all of a sudden everything goes haywire.
Yeah. Also, another
That's
big
fun.
problem is like when the headless client crashes, all the AI bugs out, because whichever computer is running the AI. Because here's a nifty trick: you can actually make any computer that is connected to the game run AI on their core. The problem is that this increases networking traffic, and that also increases performance. So you want to offload it on the headless client, but not on too many headless clients, and not on everyone on the server, which is very fun indeed. But I digress. Let's
fucking DDoSing people with headless
I
client.
thought I didn't understand networking, but now I know I really don't.
Yeah,
I just have
so to basically give you a quick explanation, like each AI is ran inside the process of a single device connected to the server. So this can be the server, this can be the headless client, this can be the regular client. When this client is destroyed, so he leaves the server, the AI that is connected to that client stops working. And there is no way in Arma to transfer the control of an AI from one client to another except the HC transfer, which is kind of broken. But let's not worry about that now, because we need to explain some CBA settings. All right, so CBA settings are a sort of an extension of description ext, but they have a little bit more of an interesting thing to them. They offer you to adjust mod-based properties to your liking. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up all of these configurations, and I'm going to give you like a very quick explanation of how things work. So, you guys have maybe at some point open up your add-on configuration menus and your mission configuration menus, and you'd see these kind of game option menus which appear everywhere, right? These are actually made by CBA, the mod that we're using inside of our ops, and just as a base mod for all of our Arma modding. The thing is, what it allows you as a modder and as a mission maker is to set variables for, or rather parameters and variables for your modifications on a permission basis, on a per server basis, per client basis, basically anything that can be compartmentalized and tuned to your liking, you can modify it in CBA. And what it matters to us is that if we're making a mission with custom settings, it is the most reliable way to change these settings in a file called cba_settings.sql. Now, the way it works is pretty simple. I'm going to open up the Visual Studio and I'm going to type in cba_settings.sql. And now we have an empty file. That's good. We don't need anything more, but what we do need to do is we need to add some customization to it. Now, there is a lot of custom libraries to get your CBA settings out of. ACE3 has all of its features documented, and generally all of them will have some modicum of CBA settings written down inside of it. CBA also has its own kind of like function library, which is a bit more contrived. However, your best source of CBA settings are two sources. The first one is the FPA GitHub, which has its own forced and regular settings and hard forced settings inside of this GitHub documentation, and also the in-game menu. Because here's the funny thing. When you open up settings in the editor, open up game options, and open up configure add-ons, hey, look at this. I'm hovering over the name and it gives me what the settings name is. So for example, if I want to modify the A3M property for plane speed indicator, I type in A3AM common plane speed, and then I know which parameter, or rather which number corresponds to which type of property, which is good for me. And equally so, for example, if I'm making a change to cookoff, I can just type in ace cookoff enable equals 0, and then it's not going to work anymore. Now let's take this information to Visual Studio. Alright, so we got our file over here. What we want to do is first thing. So like I already said, headless transfer sucks. We agreed on that.
Yep.
What we're going to do is we're going to go into configure add-ons and we're going to scroll all the way down to AceX headless. By default, it is not enabled. AceX headless enabled equals false. And now we don't need to worry if this is being properly saved or not in the options screen, and then if mission SQM is going to remember these properties. The force flag will make sure that the setting which you have defined in here will always apply in a mission. Now let's look at some other examples that are given on the presentation. There is the medical fatal damage source, which is used for impacting fatal damage sources. You have the damage threshold, which determines like what the damage threshold number is. That's like 1 through 10, I think. Enabling fatal injuries for the player. 0 means that they are enabled. Ace medical AI damage threshold is the same but for AI. Ace map BFT enabled equals false. Ace for enabling or disabling blue force tracking. Ace medical fractures equals 1 is enabled, and ace medical limping is enabled. Now, you can copy these settings from the documentation, or you can create your own by checking what the CBA settings there are on FPARMA, what you have in the editor. It's all up to you. I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to increase player damage threshold to 2, because all these properties are already kind of difficult, and having it set to 2 is like the standard that FPA has, and this is just more like standard but a bit more hardcore because fractures and limping are already kind of difficult. Anyways, let's talk about event scripts and locality. We already touched on this subject a bit before, but right now is like what we really need to talk about.
I can tell this picture
Before
signifies
we
pain.
continue, maybe people have questions to what was said before.
Oh yeah, if you do have questions, just interject me, please. I know that like a lot of you people kind of don't want to interrupt me talking, but it's entirely up to you.
Most of the people asking questions should probably forward them to voice topic and or modding mission scripting.
Yeah, I think like it would be best to use voice topic for now and just kind of poke me.
I'm also looking in voice topic, by the way. So
yes, but yeah, like I said, if you have any questions, just interrupt me or wait for me to end the chapter, and feel free to just ask away because I'll be welcome to answer.
There is also a VOD currently being recorded, so if you missed anything, you can just rewatch it, and you can also look at the guidebook during talking. But to be fair, listening and reading two different source of information at the same time is pretty difficult. So
generally, I'll try to make sure to not be as contradictory as the book here. I mean, sometimes I spout bullshit, but I'll try to be in line with the source material.
Yeah. I was just gonna say I'm the one recording the VOD. I'm trying my best to make sure that I've got all the relevant windows up, but I'm yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I also don't want the screen to be a cluttered mess. So.
All right. Well. The good news is that we're not going to be flying between many windows now because we need to explain locality. All right. So let's establish a couple of points. ARM networking sucks. Multiplayer networking sucks. Multiplayer scripting sucks, and the internet sucks. With that explained, let's explain what locality is and why we're making multiplayer missions. So, when you're making code for multiplayer, you need to take into consideration where this code is being executed. So, sometimes when you're running a piece of code, you may be running it on a single device. For example, the server which is running the mission. And the code which is being processed will not have its effect applied to devices connected to the server. And this is how we distinguish the difference between the global and local code execution. Global execution applies to everyone. So, for example, when we are running create vehicle, the command which I have referenced earlier, if you look into it, it has global effect. This means that every time you run create vehicle, it will apply the same for every device available. This has some repercussions. When a script is global, this means that it only needs to be run by one device to be evenly applied. Same goes for global activation. If a script is executed globally by activation, this means that there is no issue with how it is going to propagate its information across the network. This is different from local execution, which restricts itself to whatever the machine currently executing it is. Now, in ARMA, sometimes you will need to propagate local values through global commands. And this can be, but we'll get into that later. What was the question? Yes?
The question just what? That was a very confusing sentence.
All right, so let me like give you a bit more of a simpler explanation. So you got the global. You got two types of code. Let's say if I'm running create vehicle, right? I can just call it on your machine, or I can call it on the server, or I can call it on the headless client, and it's going to be fine, right? The vehicle is going to be created in the game, and that's what we want. If I run hint on the server is going to receive a hint and nobody else will. If I run hint on my machine, I'm going to see the hint, but nobody else will. However, get this. If you were, for example, to force like let's say, for example, if I made a trigger in game, which did the following. Let me just this is just a quick sample so that you get a better understanding of locality. If I did this, and just set the condition to true so that it always executes, the hint blah is going to fire. It's only going to fire for the devices which is being ran on. Now, here's the funny thing. If we are in multiplayer, and if the server-only variable is ticked on, this means that the hint will not be seen by anyone but the server, because hint is activation and execution local. The only way to make sure that hint propagates between everyone is if we use remote execution. Now, we're going to get into that later, but for now, let's keep it to this, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Now, by comparison, if you do the same thing with a global command, it's going to run as many times as there are units or as there are devices connected to the server. So let's go back to the create vehicle command.
If I may say something.
Yes.
There's an important thing to remember performance-wise with the global shit running for every machine, because there's been instances in the past, not recently, but in the past of FPA, where people have had massive spawners hooked up to global things, and there's been server crashes because people have spawned entire hordes of AI once for every client connected to the server. I'm sorry, guys. It's something to keep in mind.
Did that link you to Destroyx by any chance?
Script basically correctly explains what I've been trying to say. If you are, for example, globally running a global command on every machine at the same time, you're going to run this command not, you're like,
not
for
once,
example,
but like 30 or 40 times.
Yes, and that's if you're running create vehicle. So, like, for example, if I'm globally executing, or rather, if I'm globally activating create vehicle, this means that the server creates a vehicle, the player creates a vehicle, the headless client creates a vehicle. 50 vehicles are created in the same spot. And what happens is they all collide together and the server crashes.
Yeah, that or you like. The instance I was thinking of was a zombie mission from way back when. I think it was a Jono mission or something where there was a horde spawner and it fired for every single player repeatedly.
Oh no!
And the frames just got progressively worse until we crashed.
Yeah, so you need to be careful with locality when you're dealing with this subject matter, because you can like the one thing that you'll be testing the most on the server is, have you busted the locality or not while programming it. But don't worry, because while I'm describing it as relatively scary, it's pretty straightforward once you remember the local activation commands and the global activation commands. With these commands taken into account, handling them is the same all across the board. And don't fret too much about if you haven't understood this. If you have not, you will understand it once you test on the server and something explodes. Now, that being said, there are a couple of things to also consider with locality. And that is the Boolean conditions, which are used to logically check what is currently executing a command. So, for example, if I'm running a dedicated server, I can check with command is dedicated, and then it will return true. But I can also check if a server has an interface, or rather a graphical user interface, and on that basis, it will return true for the server, false for GIPs, and true for players. You can also check for GIP players with the GIP player client.
What's a GIP?
Join in progress.
Yeah, join in progress. Like basically, when you're creating a mission, you need to take into account that certain players will be joining in progress in some cases. And if you are running very special functions, like for example, if something is being run at mission start for like a special sequence, like paratroopers, for example, you want the paratroopers to eject at mission start, but you don't want players to keep paratrooping every time they connect to the server. So checking for JIPs that way is great to prevent locality issues in that regard. You can also check for headless client, which is going to be extremely important later. And finally, we're going to harken back to what happens when we use the command remote exec. Now, this command is very useful because what it does is it collects parameters and runs a function that may be either local or global and can apply it to multiple targets or all targets in the server. So let's go back over here. Our hint blah, and like I said, if it is on server only, it's not going to run. But if I were to type in the following, if I were to pass the parameter blah into the command remote exec and pointed it to hint, then what is going to happen is even though we are running local command hint, remote execution is going to remotely execute it on every device in the server, which is great when we are, for example, passing non-essential information, when we are running respawn commands and things which need to be handled on a per player basis. All of this can be done for remote execution. This again needs to be handled on a per command basis. It's really good to test this by just plugging your mission to the multiplayer. But in general, make sure that remote exec is only handled on the server. Do not run it beyond the server, because that means that you will be duplicating everything. Like if you have 50 players connected and the remote execution is called, this means that you will not be calling the same command 50 times per player. You'll be calling it 50 times by the power of 50, which is very bad. But at some point, the game is going to stop you. Either way, the general consensus on this is to not trust anything until you test it on the server. There is proper methods to checking this, but a lot of documentation on the BI wiki, on Google, on modding discords, on FPA modding discords, on Steam, and in the Bohemia forums is dude, trust me. And don't trust anyone, because Bohemia changes things all the time. Arma in 2013 is not the same as it was in 2021. So be very careful when you're testing, when you're making code without testing it. You really need to make sure that if you are testing something that may be incorrectly configured with locality, that these conditions are properly checked and that multiple players can witness the effect to make sure that it works as intended. So when you are testing your mission, get another person, get on the server, and check what happens. And if everything is the way it intended, that's great. It's good to go. If not, talk about it in the modding Discord, figure out what the locality issue is. You're going to figure it out eventually. Now, there are a couple of files, though, which take locality and use it to our benefit. And these are event scripts. Now, there are a bunch of event scripts. I'm not going to get into all of them because a lot of these are garbage. Primarily on player respawn and on player killed and like, I don't know. There's like init player server SQF. I don't even know what it does. And init intro SQF. Like these kind of files, we're not going to be using at all because they have very rare use cases inside of FPARMA. However, what you might need to look for is init.sqf, which executes the code at briefing start and client connect, and has a global effect. This code is pretty broad, and you generally want to use it when you want to make sure that certain parameters are applied to the same upon all devices. So I don't know if you have a case scenario like what would the use case for init SQF be? If you are executing something along the lines of adjusting weather patterns, or if you are adjusting AI behavior, you can do this in init.sql. But player features you want to check in init player local SQF. Now, init player local is great because it will always run locally for the player, and the player pointer is going to be always defined inside of it. It's good for us because, for example, if we're adding the briefing file to a player, we can do it through init player local safely. If we're adding ace actions to a player, we can do it through init player local safely because it only runs for the player to whom it is concerned, not for everything that is spawned in the mission. Keep in mind, though, everything that you do in init player locals can still have a global effect. It all depends on the commands that you're using inside the code. And finally, you have init server.sqf. Now, these are used for very rare occasions. I don't think I've ever actually set something on the server which I didn't need to do elsewhere. And there are some more other complicated, or rather not so much complicated, as much as there are cleaner ways of doing this in code. I don't recommend using init SQF server by init server.sqf, but sometimes you'll find a good use for it. Now, with that in mind, we'll get to planning the mission, but first let's just keep these in our mind. Let's create these init files in the editor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 files. And for now, we're not going to touch them. We're going to touch them later. But for now, they are, they're here to remind us that we have a place for locally sensitive functions. And let's focus instead on planning out a mission. So, when you're planning a mission, you need to take into account that mission preparation shortens design duration. The more you focus your mind into what the mission will be, where things will go, and what's actually going to be in the mission is going to help you immensely with actually dealing with the actual mission making process. However, there are 3 big factors that I want to take into account: the length of the mission, the pacing of the mission, and the linearity of the mission. For length, I'd say that people should generally aim for a 90-minute duration of the mission. This is I feel what the sweet spot is. It allows you to have a pretty action-packed mission, but it's not going to overstay its welcome. However, you also don't want to make a mission that's entirely a gunfight. If you guys remember, we used to play a mission called Operation Street Fighter. Has anyone here played it?
Yes.
No, but I
Yes.
All right.
Old one.
A bit older, yeah. So to talk about Operation Street Fighter, imagine if you were fighting for 2.5 hours inside the town of Kavala on Altis in a non-stop close quarters gun battle.
It was fucking magical, Croguy, don't lie.
Yeah, but the point is you can very easily exhaust players, and the same can be applied in reverse. Lenny once made a mission which had a 30-minute car ride.
God.
And the thing is, nothing happened in that time period. The players just got in a truck and they just drove to a location. That can also kill the pacing. And remember, if you don't need empty space in a mission, just trim the fat. It's easier to just put the players directly into action. It'll help you as a mission maker as well. And finally, the question of linearity. Now, what I want to talk about here is: do you want to have your game be like Do you want to treat your game like Metal Gear Solid 1 or like Metal Gear Solid 5? Do you want to have a completely linear approach to mission or a completely open approach to mission? Personally, I'm not a big advocate for either. However, you need to take into account that a good armor mission gives players the agency to complete every objective in any order or any way imaginable, including the ones which haven't been discovered yet. This is called sequence breaking, and it's pretty important to ensure that sequence breaking does not hamper the performance of a mission critically. However, if you take into account the length and pacing of a mission, some degree of railroading the players is necessary. The way that it's usually done is from mental suggestions, like objectives, by sectioning areas of the area of operations off, by denying them the intelligence which is needed to realize the full picture, and equally so.
Croguy?
Yeah.
You cut out.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. For all of this, again, you also need to take into account the fact that players will also sometimes just not approach the objective from its intended area, and all of this goes into play when you're positioning enemies, when you're positioning objectives, when the players are entering the area of operations. You need to ensure a level of openness, but you also need to ensure a level of linearity that corresponds with your vision. But I digress. This is all kind of very general theory. A lot of its practice can be played around with, and the more experience you have, the more you kind of get a feeling for it. Now, let's talk about inspirations. Let's consider like what the general subject of a mission will be. Now I wanna hear some suggestions from you guys. Like let's say for example you have a mission in conventional modern warfare. You have a mission hot in a hot Cold War gone hot, World War II. Now I'm gonna pick someone, and I'm gonna say Lanky.
Hello.
Give me a team for a mission.
A theme?
Yes.
2003 Iraq War.
All right. Radiant. Give me a team for a mission.
2020 Minneapolis.
Oh my fucking god.
Okay. That's
there, Opeth.
that would be interesting, but we don't have an America map yet.
You can approximate
Yeah.
that. I'll start there.
We can just do Altus Kavala.
Can I just
That
ask
looks about right.
why consider the theme at the very end it just says gorillas.
Golira.
But yeah.
Gone hot.
Gone big chimp.
Ape War gone hot.
Question.
War gone hot.
Yes.
You
Would
must
it-
return all the banana shipments.
Radion has a question.
Go ahead, Radiant.
Would a platoon of disgruntled mission makers storming Bohemia Interactive's headquarters count as irregular warfare?
I'd play that.
No, that would be regular warfare because we're always at fight with the Bohemia. Okay, well, let's do one more. Let's do Valiant.
Yeah.
Give me a team for a mission.
North Korea versus America.
All right, that's all fine. Now, the general way that I like to find inspiration for my missions is through historical sources, which is why people generally lambast my missions as being boring military shit. And the best source to find that is Wikipedia, Google, YouTube historians, films and books that you watched, documentaries, real life experience that you heard from people in your life, and other video games. One person who is extremely famous for taking other video games and making missions in Arma is Simcus, because Simcus makes Call of Duty missions in Arma, and they're very fun because he
Gulag from MW2.
Yeah. All of this stuff is very important, and you can use all this information to kind of develop what your mission is going to be. Oh yeah. Also, finally, like this Sunday, you can also recycle an old armor mission. And the next thing that you're gonna do is we need to pick out an area of operations. And let's be honest here. If we're looking at blended, we have so many terrains. Like, look at how much stuff you can pick from. Sure, some of these are
Wow.
variants, but in general, you have plenty of inspiration to go. Now,
Also,
Yes.
just a little side note: don't feel dismayed if you want to use the vanilla stuff, because the vanilla stuff is actually very good. You don't have to use the
Yeah.
mods.
yes.
You cut out before there, Croguy.
Honestly, the vanilla stuff with a little bit of mod sprinkled in is almost always really good.
Yeah.
That's something I remember. I played a op that featured like 90% vanilla stuff, and I remember some people in my squad were saying that they weren't really a fan of like vanilla Arma equipment.
Wow, I'm not a fan of them then. They're crazy.
I think it varies in its personal preference. but it's like,
I think that it's mostly boils down to people's hatred of the MX.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think people really hate the MX, but I mean, what's wrong with
DMX.
Altus or
The
Malden
MX
or...
is like a fucking awful vanilla gun that sounds pathetic and is just
janky.
bad.
The funny thing
Not
is,
the guy who
Blanky,
died.
the funny thing is
Anyway.
the MX actually looks like one of the next generation U.S. Army rifles they're trialing right now.
So,
Oh my God,
so let's tone down a little bit. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the editor. We're gonna go to Systems, Modules, Other, and we're going to put down a cover. We're gonna select it.
Put down a what? Sorry.
Cover map module.
There we go.
We're gonna select it. We're gonna press number 5 on the keyboard, and this is going to enable our transform area widget. And we're going to select some area of operations. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Krasnorus and I'm going to select the town of Svetlograd. And this is going to be my mission area.
I don't know if you're supposed to be showing that right now, but we can
No.
still just see the presentation.
Well, you can. You should be just seeing the presentation.
Okay.
What you're going to be doing is you're going to be using this 5 to 10 minute break to kind of discuss mission ideas between yourselves, and you're going to select these, and you're going to write down a mission team and figure out what the objectives, what the pacing will be. And the way that this is done is pretty straightforward. So you're seeing my armor map right now, right?
Yes.
All right. I want to make a mission where the players have to take the town of Svetlograd from Chechen rebels.
Ugh.
Here's my objective marker. Take Svetlograd. Here's my staging area marker. And then if I go into the area, I can spawn a rectangle. And I can drag it like this. And I can apply it like put it diagonal. And put up another marker which says enemy defense line. And that can already be a substantial mission. Now, of course, there are some side objectives to consider, but what you guys are going to do is you're going to spend the next couple of minutes planning out the objectives, figuring out what you can make in a mission, and use this information to use all of this stuff that you create as a baseline for the mission that you're going to be developing over the course of this workshop. Now,
Do you mean ideas for this example mission you've set up, or ideas for our own little mission?
your own little mission. You have the complete agency to do whatever you want in that regard.
Okay.
Now, you guys are going to get like 5 to 10 minutes while I get something to drink because my throat is a little sore. Yeah.
To peace.
Feel free to talk between yourselves. And I'm going to pause the stream for a bit. You guys can share your screens individually and kind of explain things to each other. Some people have more experience about this, some people have less. Take the wheel, guys. Up to you.
Okay.
Aldi Nord versus Aldi Zuid.
Oh.
Good.
Doodle,
What?
where did Madness go?
Where did Madness go? Away? I don't know.
Yeah,
Let's
he's
keep her.
Unfortunately.
He escaped.
Thanks for sharing. Right.
Nice.
Madness will be looking at Gem's watch once it's done.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm also
Basically-
probably gonna have to head out soon, so that's yeah.
Yeah,
right.
I'm doing my best to get things.
I'm just completely lost.
Logical after.
Where are you lost at, Karugul?
Everywhere.
Where's the last part you were not lost?
Don't say John Communism.
Well, it's just a general unawareness of what's kind of going on, if you get what I mean.
Have you been following the guidebook?
Well, for a while it's just been discussing the pacing and stuff, which is generally fine. I mean, it's pretty easy. It's just listening to Croguy speak.
I dare someone to make a mission on Porto.
Make a mission on the fucking
Has
Gonky
been
Kid
done
Bobby
before.
Boy.
I was thinking about making a mission on Porto that's like James Bond themed.
Well, since I'm gonna be having this up, I might as well share my screen, and then other people can help interact with me.
Where do you
about-
guys think Bohemia HQ would be?
Bohemia HQ. It would be
In Bern. I know where it is. It is in Brno. It is south of Prague.
Jonathan, try to pronounce it, please. Thank you.
When I was in
Fuck you, I'm gonna pronounce the other one.
the office,
It's on
army
Trier.
car parked outside. It's cool.
Bohemia HQ is on Trier, obviously.
Bohemia HQ is where your heart is.
Bohemia Interactive
Jam
Strong.
Sponge, are you in 4x3?
I am because
Bohemia HQ is
I'm
in the
running the
fortress
game in
west of
like
Raval.
1024 by 768 so that it will fit on this screen, and so basically just so it's easier for me to alt tab between stuff. I do not normally run the game in.
I'm having a brilliant idea for Porto right now, but I think it may get me killed.
John Armour.
You know what Porto reminds me of?
I don't even know what map you guys are talking about.
I'm thinking raiding Epstein's Island, but I don't know if that's a good idea.
That is such a good idea.
Well,
That's a
no,
great
you need
idea.
to make it topical.
That's
Have
a
it be
bad
about John
idea.
McAfee.
In
Okay.
what
I
world
think
is that a bad idea?
I think I can improve it by just making less about child molestation and more like this island was bought by a super trillionaire and there's like 20 trillionaires on the island and you are a force of anarchist communists and you want to kill them all, so
Well,
you have to land on the island and fuck them over.
Fucking
Bit of catharsis.
Epstein's training camp.
No, wait. I might actually
It's
fucking
not
do that, but
Epstein, it's an unnamed trillionaire.
Unnamed,
It's
unnamed.
Epstein.
Mr. E. Mr. E.
Oh no.
That is such a dumb idea. I'm gonna fucking do it.
Airplanes, you know.
Oh, a Sam site. Yeah, I've got a pretty good idea of what I
Thank
want
you.
to do actually.
Who is Sam Sight?
Isn't that
Mr. John Samside?
Isn't that like
No,
the
it's
waifu
Sam
that
Sight.
everybody's
You need to
obsessed
add
with
anything else
nowadays?
to that.
Do you remember when I was
Why is
gonna make
everyone
a
obsessed
joke
with
about
nowadays?
Tron?
I've posted
Then
my
there's
idea to
fucking
VC John.
John Tron.
That's so fucking dumb. I love it.
Like,
The
kind
mission on
of.
Proving grounds. Oh god.
I'm just gonna ask
On
this really
Arma,
quick, 'cause
capture
this
the
is
castle,
in
please.
Wayne, right?
Hmm?
Epstein Island training grounds.
The mod pack we're using. He wants
I
it.
found-
Does it matter or does
Thank
it
you.
want?
It really
It
does.
You can do whatever you want.
Do whatever.
Yeah,
Just told you
you
whatever.
don't even have to be FPA, I guess. You can just do it whatever the fuck. Just do it vanilla. Fuck it.
Brandis, I found your op.
What?
Look at our topic.
Oh, wow.
That's pretty good.
Fucking
I'm
shit,
lost
dude, you can't do that.
Part I'm lost there when it comes to the CBA settings and all that is that do we need to define everything, or is
No.
there a
No,
a
they're
preset?
server defaults. They're server default values. You can overwrite them if you need to, but I'm pretty sure, and Davaka will correct me if I'm wrong, there are values that you cannot overwrite that are enforced by the server.
Correct. There are a few values. For example, the asymmetrical values are being. There are two asymmetrical values that are being forced by the server and can be overwritten by the mission. There's also a few others that are being forced, such as ace hearing being forced disabled by server. Because we don't need more tinnitus in our life, we already have tinnitus, or the most of us anyways. Yeah, so basically the recommendation for CBA settings is pretty much change the ones that you want to change, don't change the other ones which you are fine with.
Yeah.
Basically, if you don't touch them, they get all put to either a default value or whatever Davako thinks is sensible.
I guess.
Right. I'll just make a
I wanna play a fucking Street Fighter up again. That was so exhausting. I loved it.
No.
Davako, I distinctively remember.
Keep saying Street Fighter off, and I'm like,
Davako, I distinctively remember Croguy grenading me into a quantum state where it no longer existed for a few players, including him.
Can we do that every?
Keep in mind, we didn't have Lem's Danger back then, and now it would be even.
Oh my god, you're right. Oh, I'm gonna fucking do it. Mission idea number 2. Pain.
We just what's that map of the giant city in it?
There are
Giant.
a few.
The Middle Eastern one.
Middle
You mean the
Eastern.
Middle Eastern one.
Oh,
Yeah.
Fallujah.
Yeah, Fallujah. Just do it.
I've done live.
The whole map is a city, isn't it?
Pretty much. I mean,
Well,
just
you
do it there.
have airports and like FODs and desert.
I also recommend you don't use Fallujah because the frames are awful.
We also
not
we used
bad.
Livonia and the frames were awful there. So
Well, yeah, but that was actually well designed. Unlike
Falluja's fine.
You
fine
can't
for
blow up
urban
any of the
environments.
buildings.
Can you not?
Yeah, you can in Fallujah, I think.
It's basically
That
just the
blows.
statue garden, but with apartments.
It kind of blows.
Hell yeah.
If I may interject regarding Fallujah, a way to fix the frame rate is to just set player view distance to like 300 meters.
To be fair, it doesn't need to be much
like at
further than
most,
that.
you only need like 1,000 if you're infantry. Some people set it to
Howdy,
like 4,000.
I have returned.
You don't need that.
So,
I'm having another even better idea on raiding the island of trillionaires. So there's one squad of like anarcho-communists, and then one is just a labor union that just showed up. And one's just Bezos dead.
It's like how there's North Vietnam and then there's also the Viet Cong. You know, you got they got different commitments.
Hang on, isn't there an aircraft carrier in this? What's it called?
We have a few.
Can someone tell me the game master value real quick?
Just go into the props menu and type in ship, and then it'll come up with all the.
It's the USS Liberty, I believe, is the name of the carrier.
There's 2 of them, I think.
Thank
There's
you.
the USS Freedom. Oh yeah, and then the USS Liberty is a destroyer that has I think
Captain
room for a
Croguy.
little bit.
Sorry I'm late, so I'm gonna ask a stupid question, but what were the... Did you set a value to their variable name to the Game Masters yet?
Yeah, it's just Game Master.
Game Master or just GM?
Well, it can be anything. It can be gay Big Sucker 69. It's gonna work.
Wait, how did you find my OnlyFans username?
Damn. Also, Croguy already mentioned for mission makers, if the Zeus breaks on mission start, that's not an issue. We have a addition in our mod set now, which we can just freely create Zeuses for anyone, basically. So if a Zeus breaks at some point, we can try and just give you a new Zeus in the end.
If we're going over people's mission ideas, I was going to mention one, but I had to run real quick before I got back to Snow. I'm wanting to do a mission I had started working on the other day, but I sort of fell off on. I think I can make better now.
Mars?
I am going to do that after this, because this is going to hopefully get me back in the groove.
Like
But
the
this
planet?
one's Slavic Thunder, 2021 Ukraine versus Russia mission on Chernobyl 2020. Trying
sorry,
to
I'm
use
falling
some of
asleep.
the...
Ouch.
Trying to use some of the new areas on that map that are not in normal Chernarus.
BYU, there's like big sections of that map that aren't.
Slavic Thunder sounds like a horrible wrestling name.
Slavic.
My original name for the mission was Donbass Hell because it was based on that comfy I did with y'all on Chernarus 2020 when it was just people got swarmed at the final hold objective.
Oh, is that the one where there was a bunch of artillery?
Couldn't you just call it like Russian Army Holiday 2021?
Well, we're playing as the
It's
Ukrainians.
not all
but-
Russians.
Well, it was just
Russians.
it was just the joke of
There we go.
Yeah, about Crimea.
yeah, about Crimea.
I've also had for like the longest time the idea of maybe making an op where FPA goes on holiday, and then suddenly like the first like few minutes of the op is just gonna be like FPA on a beach, and then something happens and they find an abandoned military bunker nearby, and then they have to defend the world against the aliens or something.
Yeah.
Basically, just Saints
You
Row
and
4.
Elix should get in contact with each other.
I remember a while ago, Elix was telling me that they wanted to adapt an FF14 dungeon into a mission.
Oh shit, that sounds fascinating. I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, he also told me that idea, and I told him it's gonna be a bitch. And then he was like, "Oh."
He wants to make a trucker
Dreams
mission.
shattered.
I mean,
Sounds
you
like-
probably have to
destroying
adapt it a
dreams.
lot, but
I mean,
shit.
I really wish we had
hopefully I
more
could
tall
do
buildings
the
with
Mars
interiors.
mission for this, but I would need to swap the thing over to a different map real quick, which will take a minute.
So I'm back.
I'll come back.
Yeah, right now we're just supposed to be like.
I have some, I have some bad news.
What is your
What
bad
happened?
news?
I left the ice cream out.
No!
Oh no.
Well, it hasn't completely melted. Anyways, guys.
Moment of
so-
silence for a fallen ice cream.
So let's focus a bit on what we currently got. So I already see that Boss Jam and Lanky are streaming already. So do you guys wanna, Boss? Can you explain what your mission is about?
I don't think Boss has a microphone.
I do. I just have to be on Discord.
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Basically, it's a very simple mission where you're gonna have, you start around here, the staging area, you drive to over there, to the castle.
You drive.
All right. So it's basically like a close quarters combat where you just invade and occupy the castle area and secure the perimeter, right? Right. Okay.
Yep.
Jam, what about you?
Well, I like it when there's opportunities for various people to do different tasks in missions. So I'm trying to set up a mission here where people head from Chapoy down to Cancon, and there's going to be a few different tasks for people to do. So I've tried to have enemies at realistic pacings, and then once I've got them spawned in, it'd be sort of whatever entry people take, the other two entries people would start flowing through to there, so you'd actually have kind of not quite wave defense, but like it wouldn't just be the people in the town already. You'd get other people coming through, and then they have to complete these little tasks like destroying this radio tower, retrieving the intelligence, stuff like that. And I have no idea about who's going to be against who, because I don't even think about that until I've got a plan for the actual mission.
Well, it all kind of comes natural. Generally, the way I make things is I just put markers down until something sticks.
Yeah.
What about you, Lanky?
Well, I kind of want to do a little special forces thing where we take little birds into the AO, and then we get onto the map, use solar fucking blow shit up stuff, hunt for AA pieces, and seize a little bit of ground at the end. I'm not entirely sure where I want to take it so far, but I want helicopters and just a small like amount of players, like nothing too crazy, like maybe 18, even less than that, fucking 14. I don't know.
That's fine. All right, let's look at Radeon. You also have things set up, right?
Yeah. So the idea for my mission is, I think, pretty simple. Your player force will be a group of disgruntled ARMA mission makers that will be raiding the local Bohemia Interactive HQ in the nearby town of Pyrgos.
Bohemia HQ. That's pretty good.
Yeah, they'll have two objectives, mainly to go take over the complex and kill the CEO John Bohemia, who will
John Bohemia.
Yep. Will be in the top floor of one of these two buildings, and also to destroy the server, which will probably be in this smaller office off to the right.
Okay.
And of course, there will be. I intend to have like a standby force of AAF for when an armed group of insurgents, attacks a town. That being like a side objective that the players could try and neutralize first to prevent reinforcements from coming.
You can also have policemen just kind of showing up, I guess.
Yeah,
Lucky Roses.
What if the players start by raiding a police station to get better weapons?
That can all work.
That's fun.
AAF G3 is cool.
Personally, I don't see me and Neo being able to take down a police station, but we can try.
Well, we did that JIT already, and it worked to a degree. Anyways, Lalo, what about you?
So my mission, I've had this idea for a bit now. So your U.S. Special Forces, early '90s, think like Black Hawk Down. Players will have 2 helicopters. They'll have a Chinook for troop transport. You can carry quite a few people in here, and then a little bird for gas. They're going to the industrial area. They're going to try steal a brand spanking new Hind. They're going to have to search for here. Infantry, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out. They're going to have to prepare it, so they're going to have to take off the rotors, all that. Then the Chinook will airlift it off, but I have an idea that there's going to be a massive sandstorm. And, like, then the enemies are going to start like swarming in or whatever, so... Yeah, I like the idea I have though, so I think I'm going to try to build off that. There's also going to be like, the standard, like, enemy patrols, enemy roadblocks.
Yeah, because
maybe like a little, like, side objective, like an ammo depot or whatever.
What I'm seeing here, you want to have like a relatively straightforward mission that's actually complicated by things that arise during it. So, like, it's still a helicopter, but you can't just steal a helicopter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
You'll have the sandstorm. I know QL has a script for that, so I'm just going to rob that.
Alright, and finally, let's look at scripts since you're still.
So, we haven't used Chernarus 2020 a lot. I figured it's a map that works for a lot of Eastern European places. So, mission in Ukraine, present day, Russians actually follow through on their invasion, so you're playing the Ukrainians having to fight back against them. Sort of like infantry with a little bit of mechanization, like a tank and some APCs. You start out in the sort of northwest, a little bit. You go through like 1 or 2 of the new areas that they added to the map that are not present in normal Chernarus. You go to the radar base and you end at the airfield, so you can keep the VDV from overrunning you in a counterattack. And there's just a lot of new towns and stuff. Like if you look at the stream I have, when it lets me exit map view, yeah, there's like this city is not there in normal Chernarus.
Yeah, that's very nice. I think yours is pretty much like in the 2-hour mission ballpark. Because
and I might trim it down a little bit.
Well, that's fine. I mean, the 2-hour look, we play 2-hour missions all the time. I think like the more you guys get used to it, the more you kind of get used to making lengthier missions. But in general, like making a more reasonable, like contained mission leads to a kind of easier time for both the mission maker and the players because everything is kind of more narrowed down.
So maybe if I trimmed out the airfield, it might be like more like 90 minutes.
I'm not gonna force you to do anything. I think this is like perfectly fine.
Okay. I was asking for suggestions.
Yeah, if anyone else wants to do, or like if you guys just want to talk about what you currently have, you can paste pictures of your missions in the modding Discord channel, or you can start streaming and you can do some commentary. But I think like for now we spent a lot of time figuring these things out, right?
This is perfect. Oh.
Okay, well, either way. You guys don't need to stream anymore for now. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get back into the presentation mode.
So, what are the domes that are all over the island actually for?
Those are CSAT like military bases. I think.
They're basically like CSAT military scientist research domes.
Yeah.
So
These
they're doing evil science.
Yes.
Where they're working with the funny Chinese earthquake machine. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm
I've
laughing.
seen one in real life actually. It's very bulbous.
Earthquake machine?
Is it your
No,
mother?
no. The bulb, the CSAT bulb.
I'd imagine that a dome would be dome shaped. Call me crazy.
Yeah, it's weird. Anyways, so here's like a sample of what an AO might look like. So this is like from my sample mission Operation Wood Elf, where you just have two objectives, a staging area, and kind of like commentary which indicates what might be where. So you got stashed SAM site, you got like a position for respawn, you got where you estimate enemies to be. Generally, you plan what you're gonna put in the mission before you actually start putting it in. And if something's changed because of you realize, oh, this can be done better, this needs to be longer, this mission is gonna be too short, I'm gonna add another side objective, you can do all of that. You can have QRF happening. All of this is possible. You just need to you just need to determine what do you need first before you actually go in. Okay.
Sorry. I just wanted to briefly ask, the little teal comments that you're making, how do you actually put those in? And are they visible to players or just to the
just as
they're only visible in the editor, and you can just right-click them, and there'll be a little thing.
Yeah. Right click and bottom of the dialogue. Place comment.
Thank you.
All right.
For testing and stuff, because you can just tell people what you're planning to put there.
Yes, this is extremely useful for testers because like sometimes like I once got like a 3-hour mission in testing and I had no idea what was going on. But then like you put down a couple of comments and then like the guy who's just checking it can understand everything. Okay, so we theorized our missions for long enough, but now let's actually focus on making a mission. And this is going to be done with triggers and objective logic. Now, the way that triggers work is you have like this logically defined body, which can then be manipulated inside of the mission. And some of you might have seen them in the editor, didn't know how they work, but some have. I'll give you a quick example right now. So, let's say, for example, in my current mission, I have the government building, which is proud communist statue with Bush lurker and Comrade Stalin over here.
And John Communism.
I want the players to take this home of communism. And the way that I'm going to do it is I'm going to go into the trigger menu and I'm going to put down a... There's my phone in the background. I'm going to put down... That was me. Wow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a trigger area here and I'm going to manipulate its Z level to include everything nicely. And I'm going to call the trigger task government security. And that's great. Now we have an area trigger which is going to be handling our objective logic. But let's consider the following. We want our triggers to not just express, something that is basically we want to use them to handle pretty much everything that is tracking the activity of in-game characters. So, in the case of this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put down a condition statement for it. Now, ARMA is great because triggers have some predetermined conditions, which can be concluded by typing in this, which comes by default, and then it takes these fields into account. So let's say, for example, I put in condition seized by op4 because players will be op4. I'm going to type in activation type present, and I'm going to make it server only. And then in the activation field, I'm going to type in
So this is going to execute as soon as like all enemy forces inside the trigger are cleared out.
Basically, yes. So, like for example, if I have an area that is controlled by, I don't know, like let's take.
You could use Shidakis, maybe.
Yeah, I can use Chodakis. I can use green for Chodaki, and I put a rifle section here. These guys are going to be controlling the area, but until it is seized by op4, the objective is not going to complete. And then all of this logic in the activation field of the trigger, which is how it runs, is not going to activate. Now, keep in mind, there are some other very fun things. You can also do this in a more of an inverse fashion. You can type in activation independent, not present. And then what you're going to do is you're going to have this objective complete only when all the AI in the area are killed. This is also equally useful, but you can do this for all of your objectives. So that's for the task government secured. And let's look at a couple of more conditions. So
Hey, Croguy, if you're talking, you're cut out.
oh, sorry. It happens sometimes. So bad. Do you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So a condition field is a Boolean checker. It keeps checking a Boolean statement, which is inside the trigger, and while it is false, the trigger is deactivated. When it sets to true, the trigger is activated, and the code inside the activated state starts running. So let's check this again. We have this trigger over here, task government secure. Now this one is pretty straightforward. Because it uses the statement, the expression this, it will just check all of these values. But let's make a different objective. Over here, I have made an objective called destroy tanks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a trigger, and I'm going to put down a trigger without an area. I'm also going to put down a independent Chodaki tank, which is going to be, I don't know, let's take something which is like cup based, like something like this, and we're gonna place them without crew because we're being gentle, and we're gonna put them over here, and I'm gonna open up the attribute menu of this tank, and I'm gonna call it tank target, and I'm gonna paste it like 3 times. And I'm gonna have tank target 1 and tank target 2 as well. And I'm gonna position them around, keep them unlocked, but generally they're going to be acting as targets for us. Now, we have this trigger without any enemies, without any definition, and we're gonna call it task tanks destroyed. We have this activation field, but we're not going to be using it. What instead we're going to do is we're going to delete this, and we will type in a condition
Fancy
check.
code.
Yeah, now what is this fancy code going to be? Now, if
Not a live tank target.
exactly, that's pretty straightforward, isn't it? Now, normally is you would go into like Bohemia Wiki, and then you'd say like vehicle alive, and then you'd search, and then there is an alive button, and you click, and it explains how alive works, and that's what you use. So in this case, it will be alive.
What does the exclamation mark mean?
It means the opposite.
That's fancy code for not.
Yeah, that's a logic operator. So all of these, there are multiple logic operators you can use. The exclamation point means not. The double ampersand means and a double this stick thing is or. Yeah. And if you studied logic in high school, then you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I hope.
Okay.
You can string these together for very complicated Boolean checks, but in general, this will be adequate enough for us. And then we just type in
Cut out.
well, I didn't. I just was writing this. So no, you just type in all tanks destroyed, remote execution hint.
Would you set that to server only?
Oh yeah, and that's one more thing. Like this, the good recognition. It needs to be set to server online. Everything will be fine. Let's actually check if this one is as well. This one is great. Alright, so now I have already made 2 objectives for my mission. Wow, this Sunday mission progress is going great, isn't it? Let's get back to the presentation. So, keep in mind though, there is another funny thing that you can do with triggers. Let's say, for example, if I want the entire town to be checked if it is seized or not by one of the sides, what I can do is I can put down a 500-meter area, and I can do activation seized by offer. And this is going to be present, server only, repeatable. And then if I have like something like, I don't know, let me just copy this. If I have an expression set up like this, then this means that when the trigger initially activates, the statement is going to say city under control by the Russians. It will then, at some point in the mission, if a counterattack happens and the players in the area are overwhelmed, the same trigger is going to deactivate and bring out a notification saying city under control by the Chechens. And because it is a repeatable trigger, this statement can switch constantly between one state and another, constantly executing all the code which is inside. Equally so, and this is very important, you can put down a particularly funky trigger. You can put down a master task trigger which determines if your mission is complete or not.
Then have its condition set to trigger A and trigger B and whatnot. Just guessing.
Yeah, this is an example. So you would be using the Boolean statement trigger activated. Actually, let me just name this trigger task down secured, and this would be trigger activated task down secured. And this would be, this would be like the complete definitive way to consolidate all of these objectives in one big mission complete system. Of course, now I'm still working on this mission. This is kind of like an early iteration phase, but with these 4 triggers, we have already made all of the logic that we will be using to create tasks, which is perfectly fine for us. So this is all it takes, for example, for a regular mission. Now, a more gimmicky mission, like for example, what the Waco makes, you would need a lot more scripting. You would need a lot more consideration. That there's a lot more stuff to do in depth, and it's very difficult to make complex things just with triggers. But if you're considering like a tactical scenario, checking things with triggers is perfectly reasonable. Any questions?
None from me, really.
All right. Well, you guys will have like 5 minutes to put down a bunch of triggers defining your mission logic. I'm assuming that some of you have already started doing it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just a pretty small break. Use it to just kind of finish up your objectives, and you'll be fine.
So about like using triggers to move AI, like I guess set waypoint activation.
Yes. You can link a trigger to a waypoint, and then after the trigger is activated, the waypoint will complete.
Does it have to be? Does the trigger have to be set to that type? Skip waypoint.
No. Skip waypoint is it can be set to anything, I believe. You as long as the waypoint is not guard or let me just like check this again. If I put this unit down. And give it a waypoint. As long as you use waypoints which are not guard and hold, you're going to be fine.
So I can like emulate the hold waypoint if I just set it to move and then attach a trigger, because then that trigger will be the only thing letting it move from that move waypoint, correct?
Exactly. And then as long as this trigger is not activated, this waypoint is not going to complete itself.
Nice.
The helicopter waypoints are also completely fucking borked. Just putting that out there.
Yeah. This is something to take into consideration. Like there are certain things which are kind of fucked and don't really work the way they're intended anymore. Just don't worry yourselves too much if this stuff,
How would you go about checking if like a prop is no longer in a trigger?
You can check it. So if you are taking something out of an area,
yeah,
there are two ways of doing it. One way is to use the this list value inside of a condition field. So I don't know if you have something like this list contains value, and I'm just gonna like check this really fast. Mm. So okay, now let me like explain you again. This list looks like this, right? And what it does is it returns all the objects which you have spawned and which are in the in the trigger area. Keep in mind though, this value only checks at the moment of activation. So not exactly reliable, but what you can do is you can also do a bit of a workaround, which is more or less just spawning a vehicle, setting it as a trigger owner, and then checking if a trigger is not present. And that can also be a valid activation type. There are multiple ways of doing this. I can't remember exactly how do you check for empty objects. One way to do it, I think, is also if you you can also make like a smaller sized object and just have a small trigger to put the object inside of. So I don't know if you have like something like I don't know.
How could I get a? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
If it- proper-
Every object, so every object that you put down in armor can be killed.
Yep.
Including inanimate objects.
Hovercraft.
If you destroy one of Simcast's radios, it flies like really far, which is quite funny.
Wow. So yeah,
Wow.
to the experienced people here, is there a way I can get a group of AI to stay perfectly still until they're given a waypoint or whatever?
Yeah.
Oh
disable
god, yes,
passing?
I know what. No, what he's trying to do is trying to get rid of that when they automatically move to formation. I
Yeah, you can just
remember that, but I
disable
can't
their,
remember.
attributes. You can disable moving into formation at the start.
Yeah, but you
Yeah.
need to re-enable them once you give them the waypoint. Otherwise, they won't move.
Yeah, I think it's
So set their
a.
I think
combat mode
you
to
can
like.
do that in the waypoint itself, though. So
Yeah, I think there's a thing you can
So if I just
execute
set
in
their
the.
combat mode to open fire, as opposed to open fire keep formation.
Then what you do is you, at the start, have them like disable AI path, and then you just enable AI sort of as and when the trigger is gone, I suppose.
How would I do that for an entire group? Oh, well, I guess.
And you have to do it per unit.
Yeah, or I remember something. I don't remember how, but it's something that you would just put into the squad leader that kind of prevents that
just-
initial kind of
Unless you cache
move.
them, if you cache the units, they'll stay still, and then sort of when they're uncached, they'll do their AI stuff then.
Let me see if I can find it. Hang on.
What does that mean?
Could you not just do a 4 each? No.
Hang on.
Dwacko probably has an answer. Just saying.
What were we talking about again?
They were asking.
I have a group of AI that I want to stay in like barracks and such until.
So the way to hack it is, can you look at my thing, please?
Yep.
All right. So let's say, for example, I have a squad which I want to kind of keep in an area. So like in this village, right? I put them down, and I have 2 waypoints. So I want them to go over here when shit hits the fan, right? And I'm gonna determine if shit hit the fan with a trigger. However, the thing is, the AI receives the waypoint at the same time as the trigger condition is established. So what you're gonna do is you're going to set waypoint activation to this first trigger, keep them in the facility, and then you can just keep them in this position.
Would they not would they not return to their default formation then?
There are multiple ways of kind of fixing this. What you can do is you can just kind of in the activation, you can run a piece of code which activates and reactivates, or rather deactivates and activates their pathfinding with, I don't know, like
This list, perhaps, because that's an array
Yeah.
of all group members.
Yeah, you can do this list. I think. No, hang on.
Okay.
It should be uh, it's actually a lot more simpler than I thought. So the way I would do it is I would do I don't know. So you have to do command disable AI and enable AI.
What does underscore? Oh, I see. It's a for loop.
I'd say like something like this might work. I might be incorrect on this. I can just run it in single player, I guess.
What is underscore X? Is that just?
That's the position in the loop.
Yeah.
Because what he did there is he put a bit of code that loops over every unit in the composition, and then.
Yeah, and then if I open up in Zeus. When I open up in Zeus and when this trigger activates, then, or rather, this trigger would activate if I didn't.
Well, you should. Well, you'd want to set them to re-enable their AI and just have their AI disabled at the beginning.
I did this backwards, my bad. This should be enable AI. And then I can have like, I don't know, any player present. Hi, Kitty.
Valiant.
I get it already.
Valiant cat.
Oh yeah, is like dynamic sim and Arma like good enough, or is it?
No, we'll get into that later. Like it's gonna
Dynamically
be
simulated cat.
Can't wait.
We're gonna talk about this in a bit later. Anyways, let me just like demonstrate how this works. So if I go like over here, you can see that their pathfinding is disabled, and then if I get in here, it should have gotten re-enabled.
Did you give the trigger an actual size?
Yeah, I think I did. This is weird.
I'm somewhat sure that you're not in the trigger. Pretty sure you placed it down the road. Or not.
Is the condition in the waypoint still disable AI?
Oh, it might have been. Hang on.
Also, while you're on the waypoint, can you hold on that for a second so I can copy the code?
No, it actually is like this. This is. Hang on a minute.
You have a curly brace for the left and a normal bracket for the right. Wait. Never mind. That's just my screen.
Oh, hang on. Oh, but I'm completely wrong. I'm doing this completely wrong. This should work. If this doesn't work, then I made a big boo-boo. All right, let's test this again. And then these guys are not active, and if I teleport over here, that's weird. Oh, the trigger. Okay, so this is a bit of a janky thing with triggers. Let me like.
Yeah.
Let me explain the situation with triggers. Or rather, with triggers and waypoints. So waypoints have an activation, or rather, a completion area. If you go like in this field, and if you look at waypoint transformation, you'll see that it has a completion radius, and you can set this from 0 to like, I don't know,
1 billion.
Yeah. But generally, like triggers, waypoint triggers are best when they have an area that's bigger than 0, and ideally bigger than 10 even. Because the AI is very inaccurate, and sometimes they'll like struggle for minutes at a time to get inside this like very minute center of a waypoint. So like if I respawn over here, you know.
I assumed it had like a default.
Now they're not moving, but if I like get in here, get in here even.
I believe I think it's just that they aren't. I remember having an issue quite similar to this, where it just simply they didn't react to anything. The AI was just kind of immobile. Try and just interacting with the squad leader. Just try pulling him slightly. Oh well. No, maybe not.
This is no, this is really odd. I don't think I ever had this happen before. This is really weird.
Here's a question: have you tried punching them?
Well, no, because that's not gonna change anything.
It might.
Let's see here. Why does this not work?
So I was gone for some time, but Croguy, correct me if I'm wrong. Aren't you passing for each an array, or is? Oh, never mind. Never mind. Never mind.
This should be working. I think something's wrong with the trigger. Like the trigger doesn't activate for some reason.
Maybe it's because it's server only.
Oh yeah. We can try that.
Run it on multiplayer.
But no, then that wouldn't matter because I'd be testing.
There are worse cases. There have been triggers that act fucky, man. Just maybe.
Yeah, it's a little weird. I think like why does this not?
Shouldn't condition be not true, but the trigger?
You're right. This is
Yeah, it
odd.
should be a trigger activated.
But
yeah,
then,
your act. It should happen anyways, though. Yeah, but maybe.
Yeah, that's also like another way to do it. We can do like test, and then we can do trigger activated test.
How the mighty have fallen.
God, yeah, no, this is like terrible because like I'm trying to explain people how to be good at making missions, and then I'm fucking up at like the very.
Oh yeah, Kroga, don't worry. That happens every single time you want to show somebody something. Immediately it breaks.
Yeah, no, the worst thing is like I actually made a mission like some time ago which used this exact gimmick and it worked, but now I can't remember how it works.
Load the case, like, mission making is always works on my machine, and you get everybody else to test it. And
No, now it doesn't even work on my machine. This is so fucking weird. Why does it not work?
Mission making gives, it gives, and it also takes away.
The
It's a
wonders
horrific
of the
cycle.
Eden editor.
Thread closed.
I'm just quietly trying to make sense of all this.
Me
Oh, yeah, that's mission making in a nutshell.
Yeah,
Nobody actually understands what
So, all right, Kroga, debugging time. Put the hint box.
Yeah,
in
you
the
know what?
trigger.
Yeah.
This is advanced debugging techniques. How
Yeah.
the fuck do I debug shit?
No. Let's focus a little bit. So by now we wasted enough time on this to actually figure out how to put down triggers. I mean, at least you guys, I assume, did. I'm still fucking. I'm a baby. I don't know what I'm doing. And we kind of you guys have put down some objective triggers. You've done some stuff, and that's great. Let's focus on debugging and let's explain what's going on right now, because that's the next chapter, and it's very short. There are a lot of errors that you can get while testing stuff in Arma. And there are 4 basic types of errors that you're going to encounter while mission making. The most common error that you're going to get is a syntax error. So syntax error is like when you're, I don't know, like I open up the console and I type in hint / and I try to execute and I get the syntax error.
Oh.
Or whatever.
Wait, what the fuck happened?
Last half of your sentence got cut off there, Kroga.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, probably because of tab switch. Anyways, so sometimes you're going to get like these kind of really basic bitch errors, which are syntax errors, and you can figure them out very easily through the script errors which pop up on your screen. You can also find them in the logs in app data. You just go to app data, local, Arma free, and then you're going to find the logs for your errors. Now, beyond that, you also have type errors. Now, what type error means is when you're passing a value inside of something, you might get something that looks like this: error hint, type number, expected string. When this happens, the error is caused because you have the wrong type, and then the only way to fix it is to use the right type or convert it to something more sensible. Then you finally have the exceptions, which are very complicated errors, which are like referencing missing models, referencing classes which are missing. These are like very difficult and require more in-depth understanding of the code. And you also have bugs. And bugs are unwanted code behavior. So in the case of these fuckers over here, this is a bug because I've written out a piece of code and it checks something and it doesn't work. So, I have, hint blah, and I have all this stuff. And I try to, I start the mission. And would you look at this? The trigger is not activating. Why is the trigger not activating? I don't know. It
Question:
seems
Have you
that
considered this because you're teleporting into it? So
maybe.
No, that should work. No. I've
Okay.
done plenty of trigger testing by just teleporting there. That should
Yeah.
work.
This should work. This is a pretty. This is a really weird error. Actually, I don't think I ever had this happen to me before.
Can you just try and put down another trigger? Just figure out if this trigger that's just cursed or if it's something more generic.
Let's try.
So you didn't set it to server only. Is that just because?
Well, it's like whatever right now, just testing logic. So, I walk in and look at this. It's not activating the waypoint. This is really very unusual. I don't think I ever had this happen before.
All right, everyone has performance problems sometimes.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Croguy, I meant try put like a hint in the trigger.
I
and see what
did.
that
It's
fires.
over here, dude.
No, not in the waypoint, in the trigger itself. So maybe the waypoint is just broken, but the trigger is actually firing.
Yeah, that can also happen. It's like
because you have like multiple parts here that could individually be broken, or everything could be broken. Like
yeah, and we're going to work on that issue later. Yeah, the trigger.
the trigger works. The trigger
it's
works.
a waypoint problem. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna keep this in our mind, and you're going to have a better solution to this later. Okay? Is that okay, Radiant?
Sure.
All right, wonderful. So we're gonna delete this for now, and I'm going on with this. And we're going to actually tackle this in our next chapter, FPA built-in functions. Rather, not so much built-in functions, but also something else afterwards. We have a couple of useful things which we have built into our code base on the GitHub, and one of those are JRM functions. So a couple which you will be using will be things like force respawn, caching, safe zones, and whatnot. The first one will be the FPA JRM func init call. This is the initialization function, and you need to run this to establish the correspondence between the respawn system and the JRM function, as well as some other things. So this cannot be put, or rather should not be put, in these random places inside the mission. Init player local SQF, and we're gonna paste this block of code in there. And now what we've done is we have initialized the JRM system with 0 respawns. If you, for example, typed in -1, you would receive infinite respawns. But if you typed in a value of 5, you would receive 5 respawns. Now, what does this mean? Well, when you have a respawn count of 0, this means that by default, players cannot respawn on their own accord. By setting the value above 0, the players will respawn out of Zeus control, and by setting the value to -1, they will always respawn after they are killed. Now, in the context of a mission, you may have a different system. For example, Sully likes to have missions with 15-minute respawn intervals, and some people might have missions with a limited number of respawns, but also respawn interval. And the way that you do this to secure this, you can just add this counter to init, and then you will have a hard limit of how many respawns a player might have. However, keep in mind, if you do set it to 0, you can use a different line of code to, respawn the players. And this is the force respawn function. So in in the context of JRM, this is a local function, so it applies to individual players. What we need to do is we need to use the remote exec command to tell it where to respawn the players. It accepts basically anything you spawn in the mission, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a trigger. Actually, I'm going to rename the staging area trigger to respawn_east, and in one of the objective triggers, I'm going to put down this block of code. So it says respawn_east remote exec FPA JRM func force respawn.
Question.
Wouldn't you want to set that as a? Oh wait, never mind.
What does east mean? Like, I know the direction, but what does that
So,
actually mean?
so in the context of FPARMA, they use a couple of magic names. So when you have something called, when you have respawn markers, you have multiple types of respawn markers. You can have pop a couple of them.
It's west, east, and gorilla.
Yeah. Basically, like when you have respawn, so when you have description ext, right?
Mm-hmm.
In here we have respawn template base and respawn base. When you are using the default,
You're cut out again.
Oh, did I fuck? When you are using default respawning, you can type in a command like, for example, set player respawn time, and then what is going to use? It is going to use the base respawn marker for the side of which the player is. So if I type in here, for example, now I have two markers. I have respawn_west and respawn_east. If I'm, for example, making a TVT and I have a 15-minute respawn timer, all the I can just run set player respawn time, and I can type in like 15 times 60. And then when the timer runs out, all the players which are side blue for are going to respawn at respawn_west. And all the op4 players are going to spawn at respawn_east.
Okay.
Because this is kind of a Bohemia variable name, or rather a Bohemia marker name. And so when you establish that in the mission, that's how the game is going to parse these values.
Right. Okay.
So I noticed you set in a trigger something about respawn_east. Will that make it so that the respawn_east over there is replaced by this new one?
So here's the funny thing about force respawn. The way that force respawn works is that it conducts.
Oh.
Yeah. So let me talk about this function. In this function, you can set anything you want as the parameter for the respawn position. So, for example, I might have respawn east, but what I can also do is I can set medevac vehicle. And then if I have a vehicle which is called medevac vehicle inside of this map, then the players are going to respawn around it instead of whatever marker you put down. I can even do that like for a more sensible, since we already named Game Master. If I type in game master remote execute FPA GRM func force respawn, all the players are going to respawn around me.
Okay.
Cool.
Question though, if you had like a medevac vehicle, like in the example you brought up, let's say the player logi team in charge of it gets caught out and it blows up. Would there be redundancy in that so that it doesn't just break outright? Because if your medevac vehicle's dead, then where does it respawn people?
Then you need to handle that in further code. So, for example, if you have a case scenario where you're respawning people by vehicle, and if the vehicle is okay, so when the vehicle is destroyed, it still exists in the level, but only when it gets deleted, it stops existing.
Okay.
And when it gets deleted, the players using force respawn are going to respawn at 000 on map coordinates. So that will be over here.
In the water. Amazing.
The way to fix that is to simply check if the vehicle exists, and then if it doesn't exist, you put the spawner in another area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Croguy, I have a SQF question in general. So can you look at the trigger real quick? Like it doesn't matter. This is also fine. Basically, the force respawn. So in the first square brackets, you pass the argument.
Yeah.
Can that argument be another method call or like a function call? So could I, for example, create a function that I don't know, find respawn position, and that then has some internal logic and basically just returns coordinates? Would that work?
Yes, but as long as that function returns a value, it will work. The only tricky part is because it says SQF, you might not be able to put the function call inside of the square brackets. Yeah, like give up. Can you back me up? You can't put the function inside a square bracket, right?
Unfortunately, Devako isn't here.
Oh fuck, he left.
Dog.
Anyways.
So I would have to specify a local variable, let's say, populate that with that value, and then pass the local variable.
Yeah, but we're gonna.
That is fucking stupid, but okay.
All right. Listen. You can check this in coding yourself since you're a bit more coding savvy than everyone else. But we're gonna do this in a later segment, so bear with me, please.
Oh no, sure, fine. I'm just.
Yeah. So, but this is kind of like just the basics. We're gonna modify this basic. Anyways, the last useful GRM, the last useful GRM thing is the safe zone trigger. And you can put this down by making a new trigger with global activation, and which checks if anybody's present. Or not so much if anybody's present, but also if vehicle ace player is in this list. What this will do is this will activate the trigger for whoever enters the trigger, and it will run the safe zone regulation on them. And this will make sure to prevent things like Sally blowing everyone up with a howitzer.
Do it again too. I ain't scared.
Yeah. Keep in mind, because this is a global function, it can be used in any framework you want. It can be done in FP framework, it can be done in LMF, it can be done in what we're currently doing. Whatever you do, you can create your own safe zone trigger and it'll work just fine. I'm not gonna create it for now. I'm gonna create it after the presentation is done because we kind of need to keep up pacing. Like we're starting the mission in an hour and there's sort of like 20 slides left.
Christ.
Wait,
It's fine.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
It's fine. It's fine, boo. It's gonna be fine.
It's okay. The briefing's simple anyway.
Yeah. So finally, the last thing that we got from the GRM components is the caching system. And the way the caching works is okay. So if some of you guys may have attended my last mission making seminar, but basically the way that FP caching works is it takes whatever group or object it collects, and then it disables its model, it disables its simulation, and it kind of hides it from everyone for a while. This is useful if you have essential units which are being pre-spawned. So let me give you an example. Let's say that we have this group of boys, right? And I want them to kind of stick around, but I don't want them to be simulated all the time. And I don't want them to, I don't want them to run away from me and the objective prematurely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on their leader and I'm going to type in the following line of code. All right, so now I have created this function call inside of the init field of the squad leader. What this does is it collects all the groups and caches them under the ID cache government. When they are cached, they won't be moving around, and we now have the ability as game masters to uncache them when we want them to. So what we're going to do is we're going to put down an activation trigger. And proportionally, this trigger is going to be something like, I don't know, like this big. Yeah, it's fine.
Someone's hot micing.
Oh, God.
Jesus Christ.
That was a bit more than hot micing.
Yeah.
Fucking
Anyways,
plasma
so
mic.
we're gonna make a trigger called cache government, and we're going to have its activation be any player present. When the trigger activates, we're going to run the following block of code. But also, now with this call, we're going to be able to uncache the enemy. However, we can also make the same function recache the enemy by typing it in like this. So now what happens is the cache government guys are all going to be recached and there are no more players present inside the cache government trigger. And let me demonstrate this in game.
If I may ask, what's the I know we've discussed this before, especially in the context of some of the framers people use, but what's the efficiency differential between dynamically spawning enemies and just caching them?
Extreme.
About 4.
It's very extreme, and we'll get into that later. So let me just explain this. So now you have this section of guys, and they're not, as you can see, they're not visible. They're visible to the Zeus, but they're not visible here. And if I were to say teleport myself over here,
It won't work.
someone's fucking with me.
Okay, I think you just angered the trigger gods.
Yeah, someone's actually. I feel like I made a mistake somewhere, but I don't know where.
Make sure that you didn't mistype the group name.
Dewako slipped in some code somewhere in the update that specifically fucks with a seminar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just doesn't work today.
On this day, disable SQF.
Dangerous.
No, this has to be correct. For
Actually, what if it's checking if the username is Croguy?
It does. It might be a Krasnoros issue. I don't know why this would be caused.
Can you show the trigger real quick again?
Yes, this one. Any player present, repeatable server online.
Condition. This call FP on cache. I mean.
Oh, hang on! I'm fucking calling the wrong function. FPA AI. Yeah. debugging isn't life creating.
Why doesn't it immediately give you a fucking error though? Because I bet
Because
FPAFMC cache
SQF.
doesn't exist.
Because SQF.
You're calling a method that doesn't exist in a good language that would just break the entire program, or at least give you an exception.
We're dealing with Bohemian magic, man.
Don't worry about it. Just don't worry.
The
About
F in
What does it
SQF
do?
stands for
What does
fuck
it?
you.
It has to do something. Like you cannot write a language which just upon failure does fucking nothing.
You say that.
We
but
have
Bohemian-
variables that are literally in check.
Anyways, as you can see, then. Yeah.
Look, I can live with multilingual variables. That's fine.
All right. Well, now that everything works as intended, I hope. Now that everything works as intended, you guys can, utilize these functions accordingly. I assume that some of you already have done that, but you can take your time and just do it after this session. I'll also paste the URL to the presentation so you can kind of see the more concise facts. What you're going to take into account is the following fact. Why are we not using, I just suggested caching to you guys. Why are we not using caching for everything? Well, no matter the fact, when you are spawning units on the map in the editor, you are permanently degrading server performance. You are, these units have to stay on the server. These units have to be blacklisted to not be moved on the headless client. These, the more there are, and you will need a lot of them because players are much more capable than AI most of the time, anyways. They will, they will get whittled down very quickly. And, just in general, this kind of snowballs into very low performance type of game. So what we need to take into account are two factors. We need to have a way to create units which are not essential to a combat mission, but which do, spawn units on the headless client if a headless client is available.
You've cut out.
Cut out again. Cut out after.
Hey. You have push to talk
Time to get a new microphone.
I can enable push to talk.
Well,
It
I
may
thought
be
you had it
better
on
if you
me.
do.
Oh, I got
Alright.
the email account. Oh no.
Yeah. Alright, is this better? Yeah. Better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, so when you have push to talk, or when we have cached units, if they are not essential, if an objective does not need a unit to be cached, then we need to use a different method to have these units present in our mission. And how do we mitigate this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create our first custom function, an enemy spawner. And this is basically going to be the rest of this presentation. But let's focus down on it first. So, Perondas already talked to us about what functions are. Can you explain to the rest of the gang what the function is?
So basically, a function is just a bit of written code that is. The point of the function is that you have code that you would like to reuse. So it would do something more general. Like, for example, you would write a function that, I don't know, adds two integers together and returns you the sum. And you can use that again and again. So the function basically consists of an input. You can define what kind of variable it wants to take. Then it does some kind of calculations based on the code that you give it. And then it may or may not have an output. And that's basically the just reusable code that you can then... Obviously, it has great advantages if you have the same function everywhere, because if you have the one bug in the function, you can fix it everywhere by fixing it in that function, and you don't have to copy-paste everything around. So it's quite handy.
Such is the beauty of functions.
Such is the beauty of functions, and this is why we're going to need one specifically for our own needs. Now, the reason why we want a lot of functions in our missions is because, as you guys have already seen through this presentation, SQF sucks. And having complicated SQF code is a nightmare to manage. So whenever you are creating classes, whenever you are creating scripts for missions, you should consider how much of this code can be put in a function and let the player use that way, not through the traditional means. Now, what we have already detected that we need, is that we need to have a straightforward function which spawns a group of enemies and which can also maybe give them an ability to do something. Now, taking that into account, we don't need the function to check the weather. We don't need the function to bake us a sandwich. All of this stuff which is not essential should not be in the function whatsoever. And we need to narrow these scopes of functions down until we have a lot of them, a lot of straightforward functions which may be calling each other, but which, in general, do the thing that they do very well. All in all, we want to keep our functions simple, stupid, and
Croguy, what I've been taught is divide and conquer. That
Yeah,
is what I've been taught how to call it.
Yeah,
What to call it.
in my university, the acronym is KISS, and for example, in Perondus, it is divide and conquer.
Yeah, it's
But
divide and
basically,
conquer for us as well.
Basically, the general principle is always the same. You want to keep things compartmentalized and solving them on a case by case basis, and make them as reusable as you can.
The functions have this very funny thing about them where if you make them do more things, they become less and less and less specialized and
Yeah.
almost become completely useless in certain occasions. So
Yeah, and a good example of a command which there are a couple of commands in ARMA which are very bloated. The one that we're going to be using inside of our function is going to be a little bloated as well. But anyways, one more thing that I want to do just for a final remark is that functions cannot track events inside the game, but they can be used inside event handlers. And we're going to tackle this in the second presentation that I'm going to be handling. But for now, keep this in your mind. You can call functions, but the functions can't, call themselves. Unless they're called recursively, in which case, what the fuck are you doing? Stop calling functions recursively.
Croguy, it's called functional programming. Get with the time.
All right,
grandpa.
listen here. I am against this.
Loops no longer exist, Croguy. Get with the time.
Fuck you. Okay. So let's outline what our function needs to have. We need to have a declaration in a game file so that the game can see it. Because again, when I open up the editor and when I type in this stuff, if I type it in wrong, it doesn't work. So Bohemia has some way of keeping these functions in check. We need to have inputs of parameters which give us all the information we need to know how to make our group work. We need to spawn these guys and optionally assign them a waypoint, because having an automatic waypoint assignment to AI is great. And finally, we must also have a return value of the group which has been created, so that if we are ever manipulating this group further in the code, we can use this return statement without having to struggle with bloating the spawn function more. And finally, we need to have a way of executing the function on a headless client. Now, let's start these points from the top to the bottom. Remember the description ext? All right, now what you're going to do is you're going to take this block of code and you're going to copy paste it in your stuff. And I'm going to just do it in the morning because we need to be a bit faster. And if you look at me, we have our description ext file. What I'm going to do is at the very bottom, I am going to add this declaration. Config functions, class FP, tag FP, functions, class spawn group. So now what we've done is we've created a class which allows us to call it inside of Bohemia scope. However, you have this little denomination. What is file? Why are we using this? Well, what is the meaning? Well, all of these functions ideally should be stored in an organized fashion. And if I am, for example, creating something in the context of a mission, I will create a new folder called functions. And inside this folder, I will create a new file called fn spawn group.sqf. And now we have created a function which Bohemia's terrible code engine can handle. Here's the thing though, the file is still empty. We need to go further. The next thing that we need to do is
Sorry,
we need... Yeah.
So do you just add a new folder in?
A new folder called functions, I'm guessing?
Yes, so you can see it in the window, right?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, well, that's, yeah, so that's all the setup in that regard is solved. So now we need to actually deal with coding the damn thing. And the way to start every function is to declare its parameters. Now, when you are making a function in a real programming language, and not SQF, it would not look like this at all.
Yeah.
However-
Croguy, you're incorrect. A PowerShell script looks exactly like that, and I
Hang on.
hate it.
Okay, let's not talk about PowerShell. Let's talk about the params command. So the params command is a command which is local to the function and which declares variables, or it already declares parameters which can be variabilized inside of the function body. And these are very funky. The actual params field itself is an array. So if I type in the code, it will look something like this. And that's our start. But we already have an issue where we need to see what are we going to do with all of these three values. We know that we have some kind of a name, a default value, and another array which is expected data. And this is really confusing. Why is this declared like this? Well, let's explain the types of a Bohemia SQF programming language. We have a couple. The first one is the number body, which is just integers and floats as the same data type. And they are declared like this. So you take, you type in number, you type in a number inside the default value field, and finally, when you're expecting a number value, you just type in square brackets array and 0 in the middle.
Croguy, real quick question. So we're not getting the variable. We're not saying so the first parameter, underscore number, is that gonna be the name of the parameter, or is underscore number indicating that I'm expecting an integer or float?
This can be anything. This can be whatever.
Oh, okay. Because for a second there, I thought they were doing type safety by magic strings, and I was about to die. Okay, no. So that is the name of the variable that I was.
No.
It's just only number.
Everything is object. All right.
Yeah, everything.
I don't know if that's better or worse.
Even worse.
That's even worse.
That is worse, yes, because nothing is type safe. Never mind.
Yeah, so let me explain to you guys. So you have this thing called number something, and the default value is going to be 1, but it will always expect some kind of a number to be the value. Same thing goes for strings. String has a, we have a local value string with a default value called default, and if we are expecting a string type, we have this. Objects are a bit more complicated. An object can be something which is already predefined. So, for example, if you create a vehicle, the return value is an object. And then you could put this object as an expected object null inside of the params body. Arrays are bad. The default value for an array is an array inside of an array.
What the fuck?
No.
Oh, okay, well, this is actually wrong. This
That's
it
wrong.
should look like it should
No,
look
no,
like
you made it even
no,
worse.
actually,
You need to add the array
Yeah.
inside the array again, because the
Yeah.
third value here is now, without a 1, please, is basically the first array is an array of objects or types that
Yeah.
it can accept. And there's simply an array in SQF. An array is a type. And now the 3 in the array back there just means if we get an array, we have a fixed number how many objects or values are inside the given array. So with the 3 there, if there's an array given that has only 2 objects in it, it will just default back to the default value. So the array one is a little bit more complicated than the others.
Yeah, generally you'll have a bit harder time passing arrays between various functions. Then finally, you can have a value which can just be anything by not including the third value inside the array. And you can also have a variable, or rather a parameter, which is whatever the hell you want it to be. And this is a multiple type parameter. Now for example, the force respawn function uses this because it uses strings to find markers and it uses objects to find vehicles. So take that into account when you are making a function. Sometimes you can make a function which accepts multiple types, and then you just check it inside the function, and then depending on what kind of type you're using, you use a different type of method to make things work.
Croguy, quick question about SKF again. Is there a way
Yes.
to overload or not?
There is a way to overload, but we're not going to be overloading today.
Alright.
I just don't want to bother with it because like overloading, like when I
No, I'm just in
Yeah.
general.
when I did overloading in university, it took me a while to understand like these people never programmed before. So, but basically, what Peronis is saying, like if you want an example, just a quick one. FPAI func cache is overloaded because it can accept different amounts of parameters, and depending on which parameters you pass it, it's going to execute a different method. So, like in this case, it's going to cache already, units of an already existing identifier. And in this case, it's going to assign an identifier to a group and then cache it.
So, sorry to go back to caching, but is the purpose of that, does that save memory or performance somehow?
Yeah. Just generally, you want as many units cached and you want as many units not spawn at all.
Essentially, what caching does is that it prevents units from just being constantly active. So imagine having like a pretty substantial company-sized mission with like shit tons of AI, and they were all uncached. Like there'd be enemies 3 kilometers away from your position that aren't doing anything, and they'd just be fucking swallowing performance.
So, like, for example, in my mission where I have, like, an army base and such, I could probably just cache those guys.
Yeah. Well, ideally, if they're not essential, you can just have one guy in a trigger area to make sure that it doesn't, auto-complete itself. And what you can do is you can just spawn everyone else for a spawn script.
Okay, that'll probably work better.
Which is a much better solution.
You also want to avoid uncaching everything, like a lot of things at once, because that's what leads to pretty substantial frame drops.
Yeah. Divide and conquer. The more you have, the better.
I can't speak to that because I've made that mistake in the past.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's check what input parameters we need. Now, I'm going to go through before I show this slide to you in detail. Let's look at what we have. We know that the game has predefined groups, and we can save ourselves the effort of creating custom groups by just using the existing ones. However, if we hover over these things, we don't know how to get them. And what we can do instead is we can go into Tools, into config viewer, and oh, hey, would you look at that? There is a section, config groups, with a section indep for independent units, and all the factions are listed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the I don't know,
One of them.
yeah, one of them, like one of these. And I'm going to select infantry, and now I realized I have a full config path for an infantry squad. And this file path is what we're going to be using as a baseline for creating our group, because if we look into Bohemia's forums, into this thing, and if we type in, I don't know, create group, we just have this basic bitch thing, but there's also another one which I'm going to find. Create group, but we will be looking for spawn. This func spawn group. Alright, so this function is not great, but it helps us with kind of just, avoiding a lot of trouble of making these things ourselves. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the function that we're going to use the information that this function has for our own benefit. And if we look inside the examples, check this out. The game lets us spawn a specific config file path of a specific unit in there. And if we take that as a basis, then we can safely create our own thing, or we can we can even make a very kind of hard-coded group using an array, which is then passed. But either way, I digress. We can utilize all this information to our benefit, and we will, on that basis, we will also define all of our parameters. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this field, and you're going to put it where this is. So your params will look something like this, and you can get this inside of the modding channel.
These are blanket parameters, right? Nothing specific to anything.
These are string parameters.
Okay.
So now we're passing values in the function, and we want to actually have a body. And like I already said, we can just use the bisfunc spawn group, but we also need a config file path. The funny thing is that config file path is a bit of a janky object of its own. So if you look in the code, if you look inside the code of this, you will find that just determining the config is pretty straightforward. We take the parameter site, the parameter faction, the parameter category, and the parameter type. Or, in this case, a more exact one would be underscore group. And that's it. We have our config file path. And now we can use the function to our advantage.
So config file path is an inbuilt type. Is that a specific, because...
Well, the reason why I'm using it is because it allows us to make a pointer to the group.
No. It is a type, right? Because otherwise this would be like a weird string concatenation.
Yeah.
Are a type, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And to initialize the file, it's the config file, the very first there. This initializes it, and then the rest is just strange syntax, I guess.
It's basically a tree you walk down.
Yeah.
Alright, bit strange but true.
So what I'm just gonna do is I'm gonna give you the boilerplate example of all of this stuff. Because this is really rudimentary. You can just find this information out by looking at the Bohemia wiki for like 5 minutes. and this func spawn group we already found. We already have all these parameters set. We know how to get the spawn marker position, which is going to be a generic value that we're going to assign over here. We're going to get the config path from here. We're going to get the spawn marker from here, and then we're going to set the behavior and the formation depending on what the optional values at the very end are. And that's great for us, isn't it?
Croguy, about line 15, why are you not using underscore side instead of east?
Because this is also type.
Yes, but so this function would only work if the enemy AI is side east.
Well, here's
thing
the
is-
here's the funny haha moment.
Does it not matter?
It doesn't matter.
Because we have it through the config group, right?
Because you can spawn blue 4 units as op4. And vice versa.
Will they still be blue for then? What is the more important?
You can
No,
change
so-
The thing is, basically, the side underscore side variable is only used here to go down the config tree. In the end, you need to create a group for a certain site in order to spawn units, which the spawn group function does. So in the end, the east there, where Croguy is currently with the cursor, is literally which side it is. Anything else, it really doesn't matter. You can basically go down the civilian path or tree and spawn them as blue 4 in 4, whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I'm just wondering, why are we spawning everything as east?
Because it's assuming that players are blue 4.
Now here's what
That
Perondas-
is nine.
here's what Perondas pointed out, and this is something that can be changed. Because, like we said, east is it's not a value that can otherwise be passed. It can be replaced by checking which side we have inputted, or we can just put in another parameter. Which, okay, Divako, bear with me. Can we do side object east object null?
You can just write east there as well. Basically, the site is also its own type. You can do that, then you may run into issues since, well,
I'm worried about the capitalization is the thing.
yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure in the config file path it's different.
Config file path is actually case insensitive. It doesn't fucking matter.
It parses it as a string too.
Yeah.
Okay.
String can be whatever the
Yeah,
fuck.
so you can also do it like this. I was actually, so here's a funny bit. If you look in the presentation later, I actually added a little bit of a thing where
that won't work.
Didn't you just say that?
No. The thing is, you were asking me if the config path is more or less case insensitive, and I said yes. And the thing is, you can put the east there. You have to just put str, then the side object, which is fine. The thing is, we have different kind of names in the config and different kind of names for the group sites. So for independent, you write in independent or guerrilla.
Yeah.
But for the CFG groups, it's in-depth. So you would need a switch case to figure out where you want to go in them. So it's basically simply better to have two parameters. One for the config tree going down, and the other one for which side you want them to have be spawned.
And if you're wondering why it's like this, it's because Bohemia invented several synonyms for the same damn thing.
Yeah, consistent naming, fuck that.
Yeah, basically the issue is inconsistency. Now, who's gonna tell me what are we fucking up here?
Huh?
Who's gonna
No
tell me
return
what
time?
are we fucking up in this function?
We're not returning anything. I
No.
believe.
Something else. Like before we get to return, because okay, return is very simple. We're just gonna do group. That's our return statement. Here's how the group is returned. What did we miss here?
Uh,
Is it locality? Because God knows where this is being executed.
Well, let's get to locality later. There's something very essential here that if we don't have, the function is not going to work as intended.
Independent? Like it's not classified as independent? I don't know.
All right, guys, what happens if I don't pass a spawn marker?
Nothing good.
Nothing good.
It won't spawn.
0, 0,
Or it'll go to 0.
Exactly. So how do we prevent this?
We
We're
need to
going
check if
make
something
it-
has been. Oh God in heaven! There's gonna be 20 if statements, isn't there?
Nah,
Are we Yandere deving this?
We just need one. Let's be honest here, because here's the funny thing. In reality, like all of these ones can be defaulted. The problem is the spawn marker. Because if we have, if we don't have a spawn marker, everyone's going to spawn 000. And everything else, who cares about everything else?
Croguy!
What?
Square brackets.
What square brackets? What?
Don't
No,
use
not
square
square
brackets.
brackets. No, it's an if statement.
Just use.
Oh yeah. Ugh, my bad.
Why are people arguing about fucking minions in general?
So all right,
let's
so let's see here. We have a value spawn marker, and its default value is an empty string. So if we can assume that the spawn marker is still an empty string, why should we run this function at all? We can just do exit with nothing. And now we have secured the function from breaking. All right, so that's initial stuff. Now, finally, the last thing we need to do, and this is something that might help Alpha a lot, or I mean Radeon, my bad. And this is going to be the waypoints. Now, the waypoint marker system is going to work the same, except what we're going to do is we're going to have a funny little haha workaround. So let me explain this block of code to you guys. So now we have an optional value, waypoint marker, which is also default empty. And if it is not empty, we're going to create a new waypoint using the waypoint marker position and a type which is assigned. And by default, the type for waypoint type is move. So that's fine. There's no problem with securing this one. However, if we don't have a waypoint set, what we can just do is two workarounds. So the first one is to simply not have anything. And this will work just fine. But the units are going to spawn in their own position. They're not going to move anywhere. And it's going to be as is. Now, what I like to do is when I'm spawning groups, I like to spawn my group with a marker pointing on its spawn position. And when this spawn position is activated, then the units are going to scramble and take up positions around that area. And that's what I like to have, because this gives them a bit of a dynamic feeling, like they just reacted to a combat situation change. This is, pretty nice to have, pretty good to use. In general, kind of focus on having it. And lastly, we have the return statement over here. So Bohemia functions are kind of stupid. They need, they don't do return like this. It's just that, like, whatever is the last value that's being passed inside a function is going to be returned. And the same goes with exit with.
Why the fuck is that? That's like, is it a stack-based system or what?
It's a scope-based system.
Scope, yeah.
Wait, what's the difference between stack and scope?
That really doesn't matter. Trust me.
If I would go into the scope mechanic, we would be sitting here in 2 hours still.
Yeah, but basically something that's outside of the function can't be used inside the function, and thus, returning.
Oh yeah, I get it.
It's a little complicated, but like basically, SQF is extremely scope sensitive. Either way.
If you want to know more about this and want to actually do scripting, you can ask me later. So
Absolutely,
I probably will have to.
Confused.
But to be honest,
people,
Tobacco, you're gonna
yeah.
get like a torrent of questions anyway, so I really don't want to ask.
Yeah,
you.
it's really funny. I have a mission making presentation and everyone's asking Devaco questions.
Well, he's the one
Yeah.
that knows stuff.
Damn.
Well, okay, listen here. The waypoint stuff was bad, but I tried, okay? The moral of the story is don't use waypoints.
Croguy, can we do 1-to-1 tuition soon?
The moral of the story is
We do
don't
one-on-one
make-
tutoring.
Only if you pay me money. Anyways, so this is what you already got, and I'm just gonna paste this to you guys for posterity. So let me just edit the existing piece of code. And if you check the modding Discord and paste it in your function, that's going to work fine. It's going to spawn a group. It's going to work perfectly well. There's no issues with it. However, we still have one condition to do. What about the headless client? We still need to fix the headless client problem that we had earlier. And as we already know, the spawn group function doesn't pick a headless client. The basic commands which ARMA gives don't orient on a headless client. FP caching doesn't care about headless client, and A6 headless is broken. So what we need to do is we need to use our prior knowledge of locality to handle headless client transfer. Now, that's a bit more trickier to do than someone might think. And what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to use a couple of command calls. The first one is remote exec call. Now, what remote exec call does is it runs code exactly the same as, say, exactly as exactly the same as the regular remote exec command which you have used earlier. However, it's a bit different here. It can let you select who is going to run that function. And we need this for the headless client, because remember, when we are spawning groups, you want that function to be selectively picked only for the headless client which you currently have. So, first thing is first. We need a check after this one, where we're going to be using a remote exec call, and we are going to be selecting, we're going to be calling fp func spawn group recursively, and we're going to be picking some select random entities headless client _f. And that's that's good. However, here's the problem. If we do this like this, it's going to loop forever, because the function is going to find the headless client, it's going to run it on itself, or actually, hang on, let me just.
Why would you select random on one thing?
Well, because you can have multiple headless clients in a mission.
Ah, yeah, all right.
And if there is one headless client, it will always randomly pick one headless client.
Fair.
So, this will work, but it will just get stuck in a forever loop and never actually get anything done. What
Won't
we
it
need
just
is
stack overflow at some point?
Well, no, because ARMA has a couple of ways to checking if something is calling itself over and over again.
Oh, so it will just not do anything after some
Yeah,
time.
I think after it does 10,000 attempts, it'll just stop itself automatically.
Hell yeah.
But either way, I digress. What we need is an if statement, and an if statement, we don't already have. However, we can determine it by thinking logically. We use our brain wheel. Am I the function running on the server? Am I the function in multiplayer? Is there one or more headless clients currently active? And if there are, select the headless client and end my program by running me again on the headless client. Now let's loop back around to multiplayer scripting, which I have accidentally closed. We have all of these expressions, and we can use them to create our own expression for how to make this work. So, with that into account, I will just copy this and open the slide. I'm going to do this, and it's going to look like this. So, if is server. So we are initially running this function only on the server. But also, if we are in multiplayer, and if we do not have we do not have an amount of headless client entities, which are an empty array, then we are going to do something magical. Get this, guys.
Oh.
So, like I have already described in the sentence, if I'm executing this function on the server, if we are in multiplayer, and if there is more than 0 headless clients, we are going to exit this function and remotely execute the same function on the headless client. And then the moment, because get this, when you are checking is server, headless client returns false. So when this command, or rather when this function is rerun on the headless client, it's going to complete successfully, and we will once again have a new group. Isn't that wonderful?
Croguy, when you pass _this to the remote exec call, you're passing the function to itself. So I guess that passes all the parameters, right?
Yeah.
In this case, just the parameters. By the way,
Yeah.
Croc, you need to change is equal to is not equal to.
Oh yeah, my bad.
And also, we are running out of time.
Croguy has a Croguy, you have it right because you have an exclamation mark on the left.
There's
Yes.
null operator. Yeah. I mean, you can do both ways. It's fine, but this is okay. This will work, and the other thing that the Waco made. So if I do it like this and is not equal to, actually, is that even a command? Hang on.
It's a command. It's a pretty
Hey,
new one, and
Oh.
FPARMA tools have not been updated yet.
Yeah, so that's a pure update. Okay, so if I'm gonna just update the one in the Discord, it's gonna look like this. And there you go. That is our completed command. We have just, started off with no knowledge of how SQF works, and we have just created a pretty straightforward spawning function which handles everything much better than caching. Now, the only thing that you need to do now is you need to put it inside of a code block. And a code block, for example, is a trigger field. But trigger fields suck, as you can see. Because, for example, if I'm declaring my function inside of a trigger field, like, I don't know, like in here, then I do something like blah remote call fp func spawn group, and then I have like 10 markers inside, so it's gonna look like this. Isn't that nice? Don't you like to look at this?
No.
Well, there is a workaround. What you can do is you can do something else, and this is called No, it's an exec. Yeah, it is an SQF file with a set of code in it. But what we are going to do is we are going to call it through execvm. Now, execvm is a script compiling command which takes whatever file you have put inside the mission folder, and then it's going to run it in the scheduled environment. Now, the scheduled environment is kind of bad for a lot of things. We don't want to use it because it is very slow and it can stop a script and run it at a later time. However, that's great for spawning because we don't want spawning to kind of pile up and just negatively, we don't want to simultaneously be very intensive to spawning. And when it comes to, the needs for our spawn script, that's the perfect kind of thing to put our stuff in. So what we're going to do is we're going to be very straightforward about it. I'm going to make a new folder called scripts. There's a new file, my bad. And in there, I'm going to create a new file called spawn government.sqf. And this is going to be my spawn file. But you can also have like a subfolder called spawns and also subfolder called tasks. And you put spawn government inside spawns, and then in there you put in your blah func spawn group. You get blah 1 and blah 2. And then you can also do like cache government call FPAI func uncache. And all these things are going to run, but only after we, take the name, go back in the game. We have the cache government trigger that I placed earlier. I put it in there, and get this. Instead of having this block of code, I'm gonna do a blank parameter field, execvm, and then I'm going to type in scripts. Hang on, I need to remember this backslash. Backslash. Always backslash. Scripts, spawns, and this is going to be spawn government.sqf.
What's the purpose of those like 2 square brackets at the beginning?
Because this just denotes empty parameters. So a thing that you can do is you can have like, I don't know, fuck here.
Yeah, you can essentially just insert like bits of information in there through there. Like if you leave it empty, then it's just gonna the function's gonna execute the things as it would do like normally without any parameters. Yeah. But
Correct.
like if you put a number in or something, then it's gonna like take that number and use it.
And then if you do it in there, and if you open up the code, then you can do this, select 0, and then this is going to return fuck. If you understand what I mean. Because we have passed fuck over here. And then as that parameter is put inside the function, it's going to work, pretty much the same. This script call is going to work pretty much the same as the function, except it's going to run in the scheduled environment, and it's going to be generally slower than the function. But get this, here's the fun part. Because even though we are calling things inside of a scheduled environment, we are still calling functions inside of this scheduled environment, and they're going to be running unscheduled. So, the speed inside them is going to be retained. You're going to have a lot of extremely simple execvm files, which you're going to use to call one-time, more complicated functions. So, you can have, I can have like spawn factory.sqf, and I can have task town secured.sqf. The point is that you offload as much as you can outside of the trigger field, because the trigger field sucks. It's terrible. You can't see what you're coding. the more you have that, the better it is for you. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip the platoon setup for now.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Is the using scripts versus trigger fields, is that purely like an aesthetic preference? Because obviously, like, being able to tell what you're doing is important. But like, does it affect anything else? Like, can you just do anything in a script in the trigger?
You can't use certain commands, like you can't use the sleep command in a trigger field, for example.
Yeah, so those are like examples because triggers are running in unscheduled, so directly on the processor. They cannot use sleep. Functions also cannot use sleep because they are called in an unscheduled environment. However, exec_VM scripts can use sleep because they are running in a scheduled environment. The task scheduler allows them to, put a blocker on themselves. You can read about this more inside of the wiki. Oops, this is the wrong one. You can even see this, for example, in the scheduled scripts link. So, like, here's an example of scheduled scripts: init SQF, server SQF, player local SQF, player server SQF, functions with post in it, and code executed with call from a scheduled environment. Now, this is a boo-boo that I made because we're executing, functions from a scheduled environment. But in this case, in this particular case, we don't want to put sleep inside our function because if we do put sleep inside our function, things are gonna break. Because what if I execute this function in an unscheduled environment? Sleep is just gonna cause problems for me. I don't want to do that. So ideally, keep it as is. If you have something extremely critical, have it be executed inside of unscheduled environments, but generally don't worry yourselves because as long as you're putting things which are not time critical inside exec_VM, and very rarely you will do that, or very rarely will you not do that, it's gonna be fine for you. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop the class here, and I'm gonna give you guys some homework.
Oh.
Have
So,
PTSD.
Oh, Jesus.
I know it's a little traumatic, but what I want you guys to do is over the next week or like 2 weeks, you're going to finish planning out and pacing your mission. You're going to populate the map with spawn markers or spawn objects if you modify the func spawn group to accept objects and markers. You're going to continue implementing your objectives, and you're going to debug any errors you encounter, because I might have pasted something wrong, you might have pasted something wrong, the waypoints might break again, because of course they break. There's a lot of things to consider. Once again, just for posterity, work yourselves out, figure something out, talk in the modding Discord. I can already tell that the fact that you guys have all managed to listen to me for 3.5 hours, that this was a big achievement. So once again, I thank everyone for participating. I thank everyone for just kind of standing here and grinding through this. Work the code, work the functions, work the map. Just put as much thought as you can into these missions, but don't fret yourselves, because no matter what happens, at the end of the day, you're going to have a good mission. I can count on that, because from what I've seen already, you guys are putting a lot of effort.
And don't be scared to ask questions. I may not be
Yeah.
always there. There are other mission makers. If there's really heavy script questions, I guess I'm the only one here. And
People will help you out.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I kind of got lost after you finished the func spawn group thing.
Well, I mean, it's fine because exec_VM is like very simple, and you're going to get you already have the documentation available in the Discord, and you will also get this presentation in the Discord once I share it.
Yeah, I definitely think reading this through properly, step by step, probably help make a bit more sense, especially because like people like me who haven't had much experience or any experience with coding.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, you guys can take these presentations and they are already pinned in the modern user greeting. So just use them to your advantage and make that they are over here. Just use them to your advantage. Use all these links to your advantage. I have tried to document everything as much as I could, and I hope you guys have a good time. Now we have a mission starting in 25 minutes and then into 10. So if you guys mind,
Yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Croguy. That was
Thank you very
really,
much.
really.
I learned
I've got to
something.
attend briefing
Yeah.
in -3
Now,
minutes.
I must go. Command Vic needs me.
Oh, Bravo needs
Alpha
me to
needs
lead the
me.
depth charge.
All right.
Love you all.
Bye, everyone. And should be good. Thanks for tuning in.